Today, I messed up by thinking that I found my soulmate, only to then have my dreams crushed and realize that this guy's actually my biological uncle. Because right now, I am horrified and completely devastated, and I seriously just don't know what to do with this situation. Here's what happened. Okay, so I've been pretty offline for most of my adult life, staying pretty private and very guarded. Well, after years of being a hermit, I finally decided to let myself go for just a little bit. Recently, I decided to dip my toes into the online connection world, mostly just looking to see what's out there and maybe find someone who actually gets me. And my god, what a mistake that was. To give some context, I met this guy online, not through like an application, but just a niche interest forum and community I was a part of. From the very first message, the chemistry was terrifyingly good. You know that feeling when you meet someone and it's like you're speaking a secret language only the two of you know? That was basically us. His worldview, his cynicism, the way he parsed the world, it really just stirred something in me. Every single thought that he shared, every perspective, it all just resonated deep in my soul. I felt this intense, undeniable connection. Like maybe, just maybe, this was the person I'd been unknowingly searching for in everybody. Like my heart genuinely stirred. We started texting daily, having long conversations. I was genuinely excited, feeling a way I've never felt before. We were planning to meet up soon. But then, last night while chatting about family, a detail came up. A really specific, unique family detail that I mentioned, assuming that it wouldn't mean anything. There was a long pause, and he replied by saying, "Wait, who's your grandfather?" And then he rattled off a name, and I was like, oh my gosh, our families know each other. This is so romantic, it's destiny. But it wasn't destiny, it was DNA. The person I've been pouring my heart out to, who I thought was this incredible soul-stirring man, is actually my freaking uncle, the one I barely see but technically exists. I have spent the last 3 weeks and essentially flirting and soul bonding with the man who used to bounce me on his knee at Christmas 25 years ago. I don't know whether to laugh, cry, or scream into a pillow for the next month. My brain feels scrambled and my heart feels simultaneously tricked and broken. I feel sick. I finally let my guard down, and the one person who actually gets me is the one person I'm biologically barred from ever speaking to like that ever again. I haven't replied to his last message, but honestly, I think I might just delete the internet because I seriously don't know what to do from here. Oh my gosh, that is a nightmare, dude. Holy crap. I think I would also take the stance of like, yeah, I'm gonna delete the internet. This is a nightmare. Because dude, I get it, man. Dating is hard out there right now. So when you find someone who's like a good match and you're like, wait a second, I could see myself like living a good life with them, only to find out, oh crap, we're related, never mind. That's a level of shell shock that I'm sure would be like incredibly hard to deal with. So yeah, this really sucks, but also that is really funny. Because I know for a fact, if I matched up with my aunt online and started chatting with her, I would also be like repulsed and freaked out. But I think after the fact, after a while, I would be like, oh, this is actually really funny. So hopefully you're able to get to that spot like emotionally, but also I can completely understand why you're like devastated right now. Because holy crap, it was your uncle all along, and that would be devastating to find out, especially the way that you did.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
Today, I was given my coworkers section at the restaurant I work at, and unfortunately, I missed a table and they ended up leaving after waiting 20 minutes. And now I am completely devastated by this mistake, and I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for starters, I was basically on a double today, where I worked the morning, I went on break, and then I worked dinner. Well, halfway into dinner, I got my section switched to a different one. For a bit of context, another server had to go to like the emergency room, so I took her section, and honestly, I don't know why I allowed it. I should have just agreed to stay later with my same section. So needless to say, it threw me off, but we were pretty slow. Well, I still had like 3 active tables in my old section, and then I was given a new section of 5 where I only had 1 active. I guess I got carried away while talking to my finishing tables at the old section and just completely failed this new table. And I guess they even told me on the headset multiple times they had been waiting, but I just didn't hear it because honestly, I was so embarrassed because after waiting like 20 minutes, they just got up and left. And it's just so frustrating. I don't know how I didn't register it. There was still 2 lingering tables from the previous server in the new section, but I truly don't think I ever saw or acknowledged this table. I just don't know how I neglected them for like 20 minutes, but I'm going to make sure that this doesn't happen ever again. I feel so bad and embarrassed that people are going to think I'm a bad server, but I'm just not used to places like this. I'm used to more structured fine dining, but I hope I'll get the hang of it because this was incredibly embarrassing. Oh man, for the original poster, I completely understand where you're coming from. Picking up another section like that, one that you're not used to like looking out for, can be incredibly annoying. Because for one, it's like outside your routine, so of course you're kind of like, man, I'm not sure what I'm doing. So missing a table because you're like focusing on your main section can obviously like throw you off a little bit. And I'm sure anyone would be like thrown off just a little bit as well. Suddenly your section got a lot bigger and you're like, oh god, I really hope I can handle all this. This is kind of stressful. So yeah, I don't blame the original poster. I think it was an honest accident. And I really hope that nobody comes at you and says, oh yeah, you're a terrible server just because you missed this one table. That would be ridiculous and completely unfair, because unless you've been a server in that situation, you just simply cannot understand. Am I the jerk for blocking my neighbor's car in after they stole my spot in the snow that I had shoveled out myself? Because right now they're saying that I'm the jerk for blocking them in, but honestly, I feel completely justified. Here's what happened. Okay, so in all of the 6 years that I've lived here, snow removal has been a non-issue, but the building was sold last spring and this new guy apparently loves accumulation. Because of that, I didn't own a shovel and I've never needed one, but we got like 15 inches of snow and the landlord still hasn't plowed or cleared any of the snow out. I'm not looking forward to it freezing over, so I walk to the store, I buy a shovel, and I dig my car out. I also dig a big fat path across the parking lot so I can pull out. I take care of a couple of errands, I'm gone maybe an hour, but when I get back, this entitled Karen parks in my spot. It's the only spot available, yes, but it's there because of my labor. We don't have assigned parking, but we do always park in the same spots, so it's not like she doesn't know who carved a path. Now, I am not digging myself another parking spot, and I'm not very altruistic, so I decide to park right behind her. I have a meeting in 15 minutes, and I can't be bothered to find out whose car this is. There are only like 3 units, but even still, I decide not to go door to door. Well, halfway through the meeting, someone starts banging on my door, but you know what? I ignore it. They don't stop, and they keep coming back every like 10 minutes, but when I finally wrap up my meeting, I answer the door, and this red-faced Karen is absolutely livid. We then get into it, and she tells me I need to move my car right now, asking what in the world I was thinking, if I really thought parking like that was okay, and going on about how long she's been waiting. But I tell her straight up, I dug that spot out myself, and I had nowhere to park, so I had no choice. I then put my boots and coat back on, and I go out to move my car, and my other neighbor was there with his arms crossed, and he lays into me too, saying that I should have asked them when they needed to leave, so we can decide who should park in back of who and move our cars around. But I'm just like, what are you talking about? Because maybe he could have dug his guest a space if he knew she was coming. He then brings up that there's no assigned parking, and that he doesn't have a shovel anyways, but it's like, whatever. It went on, and I really just don't think I was the jerk here, but my neighbor said that he used to like me because I was quiet and respectful, but now he knows my true colors. So honestly, am I the jerk here? Like, I genuinely feel like I'm in the right, and they need to chill out, but now I think there is unnecessary bad blood between us, and at this point I don't know what to do. Okay, I might be the jerk for saying this, but no, you are not the jerk for blocking them in. I used to live in the snow like all the time, and my god, those spots that you dig out are sacred. The snow is heavy and you're trying to like get it out of the way. You carve out a path and you say, okay, this spot is mine. I dug it out, I did the work, I earned it. So for some moron to come in and be like, ooh, a free spot, I'm just gonna take it. Dude, they should know better. They should know better than stealing someone else's spot, because that is absolutely not okay. And yeah, there's no assigned parking, but it's like, dude, I definitely claim that spot. It's an unwritten rule. You don't mess with someone's spot that they literally dug out themselves. So honestly, I completely understand why you blocked them in and said, I've got work, I can't stop, I gotta go. Because they should have dug out their own spot instead of trying to claim yours, because there's just no excuse, and I just completely understand where you're coming from. An entitled mother takes it personally when we tell her to park her stroller outside of our play area, as she decides to make a scene over a simple rule that literally applies to everybody. And I'm honestly so done dealing with people like this, because this is so obnoxious and it happens way more than you think. Here's how it all started. I'm a 27-year-old female and I have worked in service my entire life, and I will never cease to be baffled about the passive aggressiveness of parents. This story literally happened 30 minutes ago and I'm still scratching my head. I'm now a librarian and I work in a public library in a country with heavy snowfall. As people from these parts of the world will know, when the snow thaws out and then it snows a little bit more and so on, it sort of creates this slush as a result. It makes everything wet and dirty, so indoor shoes is a must when I'm at work. At my library, there's a children's section. The rules for the children's section are simple. Take off your shoes and park your stroller in the assigned area before entering. You may not take the stroller with you into the section. This is, by the way, to reduce dirt on the floors and rugs, which children frequently crawl on, and to ensure that all visitors have space to move move around as it's not really a big library. Well, today, a young mother snuck into the section with her stroller. When my colleague, a woman in her 50s, saw this, she kindly informed the mother that she needed to park her stroller. As the mother left the section, my colleague went back to her office. Well, the mother then parked her stroller in front of me by the information desk and started talking negatively to her daughter, who was upset that they were leaving, about my colleague. It was one of those rants that was clearly aimed at me, the representative of the library, even though she wasn't addressing me specifically, and it went something like this. "Oh, that mean old lady said that we had to leave. She said we couldn't have the stroller, even though hardly anyone else is here. She probably doesn't understand what it's like to be a mother. That old lady probably has never had children. That's why she doesn't like them and doesn't understand. It's so ridiculous." Then, thankfully, after that, she left. And let me tell you something, it took all that I had not to reply and be like, "Ma'am, the rules are there so that children have a clean and comfortable environment to be in. We don't make exceptions for anyone because then we'd have to make it for everybody. And when the preschoolers let the kids out, there's always a rush. We can't have you blocking the space. And stop insulting my colleague who's just doing her job." And since it's relevant for some reason, she has both kids and grandkids. I mean, seriously, why do parents always take everything personally? Why do they think rules don't apply to them because they have children? Why do they make the assumption that everyone who thinks some rules should apply to their children somehow hates kids? It's honestly annoying, and I'm so sick of dealing with it. Okay, I cannot stand people who act like this because it's like, dude, the fact that you don't want to follow the rules is the bigger problem here. No one's targeting you just because you're a mother. No one's saying, "Oh yeah, you've got kids, so I'm gonna give you a hard time." Dude, we're just trying to clean the floor and make sure nobody's tracking in any dirt. Is it really that hard to understand? Because you know what? I've dealt with people like this as well when I've done customer service, and it is so annoying. Because at the end of the day, you are literally just trying to do your job, and no, you're not targeting anyone. So to make that kind of stretch of an assumption is really ridiculous and completely unnecessary. I'm convinced that the boomer generation is way worse than any other generation alive today, because the level of entitlement I've dealt with is absolutely unacceptable. And I'm now at my breaking point because right now I can't take it any longer. Here's what's going on. I'm a 26-year-old female, and I am so tired of hearing from boomers that the younger generations, including my generation, are messed up. For reference on what happened in the story, I work in a bakery in a very well-off neighborhood, so our customers are mainly well-off boomers. You know, the worst kind. During the week, I usually work alone, and on weekends, I work with younger girls, with the youngest typically being about 15 years old and the oldest about 18 years old. Because of that, I feel really protective of them when customers are rude. I experience so many moments of older customers completely losing it at me or at the younger girls. One time, a woman flipped out because the bread that she pre-ordered wasn't sliced when she came to pick it up. Slicing the bread literally takes about 10 seconds. We don't do it beforehand because some people don't want their bread sliced, so we always ask at pickup, but apparently that was unacceptable. Another time at around Easter, it was insanely busy. 5 of us were working, people were yelling and pushing, and I was helping a boomer man. One of the younger girls asked me a quick question because she was new, and I briefly turned to help her out for just a second. Well, when I did that, the man exploded and said that I was rude for shifting my attention while helping him. I was so overworked and tired that I just stared at him and smiled. Even the other customers were flabbergasted. I've been screamed at for not having enough croissants. I've had customers cry inside the bakery because their favorite fruit bread was sold out that day. In general, boomers act grumpy and entitled, like they have zero time and we're personally inconveniencing them just for making the bread from scratch and fresh every day. Like, dude, we're a bakery. If you really need speed, then the supermarket is literally next to us. And sure, we make mistakes sometimes, but that is not the point of my ramble. It's more about how people react to it. I help plenty of younger customers too, and with 1 or 2 exceptions, they are consistently kind and patient. What really gets me is this whole "you owe me your full attention and devotion" attitude that these older customers often bring with them and completely flip out if something doesn't go their way. I know there are plenty of caring and sweet boomers out there, but I just see a trend among them and it's annoying me so much. Okay, I can honestly say I've noticed this as well, especially in customer service. I can't count the number of times I've seen someone from that generation freak out on some kind of cashier over something that's so minor and insignificant that there's really no reason to act that way. I've seen boomers like throw their money or their card at someone when it's like, oh, you've got to pay like, I don't know, a copay, because that's what your insurance requires when you see a doctor. And then they freak out and go just completely bananas over that. But it's like, dude, this is not my problem. If you want to see the doctor, this is what it costs. So yeah, I've seen this a ton. I completely agree with the original poster, and it's incredibly frustrating to watch, but also very annoying to deal with. An entitled group decided to steal my parking spot when I was going to Target. So I got some revenge by literally hiding the video game they were going to purchase and effectively ruining their night out that they were planning. And I honestly feel great about it, especially after what they did. Here's what happened. Okay, so last night my wife and I went to Target for a few grocery items. As I was driving down the first aisle of the parking lot, I saw people getting into a car, so I flicked my turn signal on to park in their spot once they vacated it. As I was waiting, a Chrysler 300 came up behind me, waited for like 10 seconds or so, and then honked their horn and then sped around me. The parked car started to leave, but it turned towards me, so I had to wait for it to get out of my way before I could take its spot. As that was happening, the 300 quickly reversed back down the aisle, and as I was turning into the spot, he gave it some more gas, and then he backed it into it before I could. The driver just glared at me, and the chick in the passenger seat was looking at us laughing. I was annoyed, but I just went to the next aisle in the lot. But then, as my wife and I were walking into the store, I saw the driver and his girl getting out of the 300, plus another guy and girl getting out of the back, and we all ended up walking into Target at the same time. I didn't say anything to them, I mean it really wasn't worth it, but I was able to cut him off before he could get a cart, and I took my sweet time unhooking mine before he could get his. Now that is petty revenge, but it's not the petty revenge I'm here to write about. After getting our cart, my wife and I headed past the registers and pharmacy over towards the groceries to pick up what we needed, and it registered in my mind that they had headed down the other direction, down the racetrack past the women's clothing and towards the back of the store. At this point, I thought that would be the end of our interactions, but about 15 minutes later, my wife and I rounded a corner to go down the chip aisle, and we came across the same group of 4 people. We picked up what we needed and continued down the aisle to go to the next one, which is where we happened upon their cart, which they had left unattended by the end cap while they all went down the chip aisle. I then noticed that in their basket amongst their items was a video game in one of the plastic security cases and a few Valentine's chocolates and candies. And it was at that moment I made the snap decision to grab their game and one of the bags of chocolate and then rustled up their basket a little bit just so they would think that they were covered by a few other items. If they did notice, they'd be a little confused and would have to go and get another copy of the game and another bag of chocolates, which would be frustrating for them. And if they didn't notice, well, that would be even better. My wife and I continued to do our shopping for another 5 minutes or so. We passed them all 2 more times, and when we arrived at the registers, we saw they were first in line for self-checkout. None of them had separated from each other to run back to the electronics for another game, so either they hadn't noticed yet, or they had and decided not to bother. I even watched them to see if they noticed while they were ringing up their items, but they didn't. One of them just tapped their phone to pay, and they bagged their items and walked out. And by the time we had paid and bagged and exited, their car was gone. But honestly, I hope they got home and realized that after they had unpacked everything, ordered pizza or whatever, opened some beers and sat down to play their game, that none of them actually had it and their night was ruined. Because then hopefully that'll teach you not to take my parking spot like that ever again. Okay, I love this so much because this is like a great way of sabotaging someone, especially when it sounds like they're setting themselves up for like a good night out. So truly, I love this revenge. I think this is fantastic, especially because they stole your parking spot. Like, dude, there's no excuse for that. Like, that level of selfishness and entitled nature really does need to be punished. So good for you for getting back at these people because this is a fantastic way of doing that. An entitled Karen literally steals an extra seat on a packed train, demanding that I move out of the way and not take this seat, as she simply wanted more room, putting me in one of the most annoying situations I've been in a long time. Here's what happened. Okay, so recently in the United States, we had a major snowstorm. Our area is still pretty much limping along as we dig ourselves out from nearly 2 feet of snow, and because of this, the local train system people use in our area was extremely packed last night. I don't like normally getting on trains this full, but we had little choice. I get on the train to head home after work, and I spot a couple of women both covering a seat with their bags. I then politely ask them if they could just please move their bags so I can sit down. The older woman on my left does so, but the much younger one on my right gave me an attitude. She's already sitting down, but doesn't want others to sit too, apparently. I noticed that she is a larger person, so I tried to discreetly notice if maybe she was trying to cover up the fact that perhaps she was occupying more than one seat. I mean, I didn't want to embarrass her if she was. I would have just politely stepped back and acted like I had changed my mind and thanked her. Well, she wasn't filling the seat, so I decided to take it. And that's when she decided to get difficult. This lady decided that she needed to lean hard against me for some reason because she thought she would have 2 seats on the crowded train instead of 1. I ignored her despite this, and I pulled out my tablet to play a game until my stop. After a couple of minutes, when this didn't have the effect that she wanted, the woman decided to up her game. She tells me that I need to move because I'm making her uncomfortable. Now, I'm a woman half her size wearing a parka with the hood covering my head. I'm staring down at my screen and not at her or anywhere else. What am I doing exactly that would make her or anyone else feel uncomfortable? When I looked up at her, she tells tells me that she can't breathe and that she's pregnant. And honestly, I don't know if this makes me the entitled one in this story, but I told her that this did not entitle her to 2 seats, that I paid to get on this train just like her, and I was allowed a seat if I wanted one. I also told her that she seemed to be breathing just fine and she wasn't entitled to special treatment just because she's pregnant. I had previously given birth myself and I was absolutely not impressed. Basically, I made it clear to her that regardless of how much she complained and moaned, I was not going to give her what she wanted just because she thought she should have it. Now, this went on for probably about 5 minutes before I decided that I didn't want to engage anymore and I just went back to playing my game. A few minutes later, she stood up to get off the train, but just as she passed me, this idiot decided it would be okay to pour water on my tablet, all because she wasn't allowed to take 2 seats on a crowded train. I then stood up to shove the still dribbling water out of my direction because she was actually pouring it on not just me, but everyone that was sitting in that row of seats, and she was yelling something about maybe next time give me my seat instead of taking it or something like that, but honestly, I don't care. I was sorely tempted to slap the girl across the face, but that would have made me just as immature as she was. She literally assaulted me and tried to destroy my property, all because she couldn't have what she wanted. But if she was really feeling that claustrophobic, then why didn't she just get off the train then? Why did her issue become my problem? As I said before, I might have been the entitled one in this situation, but I don't regret what I did. And no, my tablet was not damaged. You can come at me if you want, but I honestly don't care, because I really don't think I did anything wrong. Okay, let me just echo what the original poster said and say, yeah, you did not do a single thing wrong. This is some crazy behavior. You're telling me you're going to sit on a train and take a seat when it's packed to the brim? No, that's absolutely not going to happen. If you want 2 seats, then congratulations, you need to buy 2 seats. And that really is my honest opinion. I don't care who you are. You can't just sit there and be like, wow, I want 2 seats and you can't sit there. Because like, bro, you can't hog all the seats just because you want more room. Sorry, but that's just not how this is going to work. If you really feel like you're being squeezed into a small space, then stand up or something, but don't deny me the right to sit down just because you don't want someone sitting next to you. So I don't think the original poster is entitled at all. I think they did the right thing, and I think this was the only way to handle this, because this lady was being unreasonable, and the way she acted afterwards kind of confirmed that she really was the entitled one. A crazy Karen living below us is constantly making false noise complaints about me and my boyfriend, claiming that we're screaming at each other and throwing things around our apartment on a daily basis. But after dealing with this for several months, as well as complaining to the property manager herself, me and my boyfriend have found no relief from this crazy Karen, and we are seriously now at our breaking point. Here's what happened. So last July, my boyfriend and I moved into a 2nd-story apartment in a complex. All was fine until about 2 weeks in, when I got a call from the office about a noise complaint from my downstairs neighbor. I've never received a noise complaint in my life, so I'm kind of taken aback. The office manager at the time tells me that my downstairs neighbor didn't give any information about what the noises she heard were, or what time they occurred or anything like that. So I think to myself, whatever, I'm just gonna try and move on with my life. That is until mid-September. I'm trying to dye my hair at about 10 o'clock p.m. and my boyfriend goes to grab something for me from another room. He moves my desk chair to the side and then suddenly we hear a banging noise. And we come to find out that the downstairs neighbor was actually banging a broomstick on her ceiling, which is my floor, just so she could try and make us shut up. Now this obviously annoys us, but we just let it go. I finish up my hair and then we go to bed. Except this continues for several weeks. If we drop something, we hear a banging noise. If we walk across our apartment, or if we sit down too hard, or if the desk chair rolls across the hardwood floor, we hear her banging on her ceiling. In early November, my boyfriend catches COVID and stays home for a few days. One night, he gets up to get some medicine and he accidentally drops the bottle. The next day, we were visited by 2 staff members from the office about another noise complaint, stating that there was loud banging in the middle of the night. Now, we deny this and inform them of the banging from the neighbor downstairs, but they just completely dismissed our concern and told us to get a camera. At this point, since we're being banged at almost every day, I'm starting to have really bad mental health episodes because of it. We're pretty much just constantly whispering and walking on our tiptoes, and every loud noise nearly sends me into an anxiety attack. We're looking for reasons to not even be at home, and being home makes me depressed and anxious, and I'm now equating my emotions to a child in an awful home environment. So about a week later, I write the complex an email where I specified multiple times we were banged at, emphasized my emotions, and how I felt like we were being targeted, and that I didn't feel safe confronting the neighbor in person myself. In fact, while I was writing the email, my neighbor banged up at us over me dropping something, but this email went unanswered for over a week. During this week, my cat fell out of a chair, and the downstairs neighbor banged up at us again. I had an anxiety attack, and my boyfriend got fed up with everything, and he went downstairs to confront this person. I made sure to tell him to record the conversation on his phone, and if things with her started to escalate, to just leave and come back upstairs. Well, he eventually came back incredibly frustrated. The downstairs neighbor had basically whined to him that she had a migraine and she could hear everything we were doing, and she declined to have any real conversation with him, but agreed to stop banging up at us. A few days later, I physically went to the office, which is very annoying since it's like half a mile uphill from my building, and I had to go up there because nobody answered my email. I spoke to the same office workers from before, and I paraphrased what I had written in my email, and I even told them what happened before with my boyfriend and this entitled Karen of a neighbor. They offered to set up a meeting where they would listen from my downstairs neighbor's apartment to try and hear what noises were being made, because at this point we didn't know what exactly her noise complaints were about, as we would still be given little to no information, and they wanted to set it up in a way where she would stay upstairs with us while we make normal life noises. Now, I agreed to it, but I later learned that my downstairs neighbor denied it. However, 2 weeks later, I get a call at like 10 o'clock in the morning that the office people would like to be by at about 2 o'clock p.m. to do a noise inspection. They then show up like an hour late, and instead of having us make noise and stuff like I expected, the property manager and an office worker came up, and I tell them about some things that I think might be causing the noise, like creaky flooring and some doors that might be sticking. They try to fix the doors, even though it doesn't really work, and then they basically push aside my concerns about being targeted and tell us to just be more considerate, how we need to mind our hours from 10 o'clock p.m. until 7 in the morning, and that we need to call the courtesy officer if there are any issues at night. Now, I want to emphasize that we do not stomp. We don't bang things around, we don't have loud arguments, we don't throw parties or drag furniture around. We literally don't do anything like that. All my boyfriend and I do is come home from work, watch TV or play video games, make dinner, and then go to bed. My elderly cat does kind of stumble or fall to the ground instead of jumping, but she weighs like 7 pounds, and she's not very active, and honestly, I think she's probably loudest when she uses the litter box. But the only complaints we've received regarding noise from her have all been about her jumping all over everything. We even bought a $50 rug to put under our desk chairs to try and muffle some of the noise from them. We tried to be quieter when the noise complaints came in, and I feel like we've been considerate, but nothing's ever good enough for our neighbor. It genuinely felt like she wanted us to float around our apartment or something like that. Now, I hoped at this point that things would calm down. We stopped hearing banging, which was really good, and there were a few nights where I heard loud yelling from my next door neighbors, which I recorded some of it, because I knew that if my downstairs neighbor heard it, she would attribute it to us. Then, a few weeks later, we got an email from the property manager basically saying that we would be under a lease violation and get a fine if we didn't stop with the noise. Now, obviously, we were angry, we were tired of being targeted, and we were exhausted for being vilified for just existing in our apartment. So, we responded to the property manager, expressing our displeasure, explaining that we still haven't really been given information on what exactly the noise is or when it's occurring. And we also said that we will pursue legal action if this continues. Well, when we said that, the property manager changed her tune very fast. She told us that her email was a cursory one that she always sends with noise complaints, even though what she sent was very much personalized to our situation. She then informed us that the noises reported were banging, moving furniture, and loud arguing. I then tell her that I have video proof that the arguing was not us, and we decided to schedule a meeting to talk to the property manager about it the following week, and that until then, she won't issue us any lease violations. During the night before this meeting, we literally spent the evening being as quiet as possible. We ate leftovers, we built a Lego set in bed together, we watched TV with the volume so low that we could only follow along with subtitles, and then we went to bed by 10 o'clock p.m. Neither of us got up during the night, and yet the next day, the property manager told us that the stupid neighbor downstairs had reported that we were specifically very loud the night before. Anyways, at the meeting with the property manager, I showed her the video that I had taken of my next door neighbors arguing, and I brought up how it says in the lease that everyday noises from other apartments are expected, and the leasing office cannot be expected to stop them from penetrating your apartment. I also reiterated how I felt like we were being targeted by the downstairs neighbor, and how my mental health has tanked because of it. We finished it off with how we needed this problem fixed, otherwise we expected to be let out of our lease with no fees attached, especially for all the trouble that this has caused us. After hearing all of this, the property manager confided that the downstairs neighbor was making multiple reports about us a week, and honestly, she seemed like a bit of a Karen. She wondered briefly if the downstairs neighbor was being homophobic or transphobic towards us, or if she was so self-absorbed in herself that she wasn't thinking about the fact that we too are human beings with lives. The property manager then said that she would talk to the complex's courtesy officer because apparently he hasn't been doing his job correctly. In fact, he's told the downstairs Karen to literally call the cops on us about the noise instead of observing the noise claims from her apartment. The property manager then said that she wouldn't be hitting us with a lease violation unless there was undeniable proof that we were being unnecessarily loud. So we went on our way, hoping everything would be fine. However, in February, I got new upstairs neighbors, and as they were moving in, the noise level rose. Now, I didn't mind this. They were moving in, so there was going to be some noise. I would just put in some earbuds and ignore it like a reasonable person, but the downstairs Karen somehow heard all of it and decided to start banging up at us again. But instead, this time it was one big heavy bang that literally shook my floor. It was like she had thrown something heavy at the ceiling or something like that. Now, I just let it go, and I made a note of it in my head just in case it continued after the upstairs neighbors finished moving in. And you know what? It absolutely did. Around the beginning of March, I sent an email to the property manager and I let her know of all the times that we had been banged at and what we were doing when it occurred. But again, this email went completely unanswered. We went up to the leasing office to get a package a few days later, and we ran into the property manager where she explicitly told us that she would be ignoring my email because she was so busy with all the construction going on in the complex, stating that she just didn't have the energy to take care of it. She also suggested that the bangs from the neighbor downstairs might have actually been the door to the stairs next to my apartment falling shut, but I know it's not that because the door's quieter, and it definitely doesn't shake my floor, so that was really annoying. But at this point, we decided to move at the end of our lease anyway, so whatever. Now, there were a couple more banging incidents that I had emailed about where the property manager gave very generic responses until she informed us that the downstairs neighbor would be moving soon. Since then, there hasn't been any more banging, so I was assuming that either the downstairs neighbors gave up or the property manager finally did something to make her stop. Yet a few days ago, I was checking the Google reviews for my complex since they will be emailing us asking us to leave a good review, and I saw the downstairs neighbor had left a nice long 1-star review mentioning the situation with us. And trust me, it's probably the most entitled thing I've ever read in my life. She said the following: "Our neighbors above us have been a nightmare, and you can hear every step, including them slamming things on the floor, and their cat jumps off of everything all the time. They're moving furniture around, and they're doing it all throughout the day and night. It has been a mix of our neighbors being truly inconsiderate and the apartment not installing the correct subflooring in between the levels. When we would complain to the complex several times every week, especially about the extreme levels of noise, the manager would just claim that she took care of it, and it even got to a point where she told me that their next violation would come with a charge. Well, she just backed out of that claim the next week and instead instructed me to start calling the courtesy patrol and said that if he lets them know the noise level is extreme, then they would only charge them with a violation. So it felt like they were questioning our integrity. I have never had to provide video proof to another complex when situations arose. Other complexes I've lived at in our city have always done their due diligence and at least contacted the other party when issues came up. And when the courtesy officer came out, he would usually be in a different part of our city, and it would take him a while just to get to the property. He would always go outside the neighbor's door, and he wouldn't listen to the noise from our apartment to truly understand how loud they were being. He was always very rude when I spoke to him also, so I just eventually gave up." Now, a few things about this. I do believe the part about the subflooring to be very true. There are some very creaky parts on my floor, but that's not our fault, and we should not be expected to change our home life to accommodate her comfort, even though we did try to do that and try to be as quiet as possible, not to mention the fact that we spent money trying to dampen some of the noise. But sure, we're the ones being truly inconsiderate. And when I read that, I was thinking to myself, I would really love to see what video proof she has. But you know what? I bet it's just of my next door neighbors arguing, since things didn't really ramp up until after that. And I proved that it wasn't us. And you know what? The whole comment about feeling like the complex was questioning her integrity and that the other complexes have always just taken her word for it means that she's done this kind of thing before. So if you don't want to hear us above you, then just buy a house or at least get an apartment on the top floor. Also, we have been in constant contact with the complex since December, so I don't know why she's trying to imply that they haven't contacted us. Now, it is creepy that she mentioned the courtesy officer was standing outside of our door because we didn't know about it, and we definitely do not like that. But I really do love that she conveniently left out the part where she got away with banging up at us for several months. So right now, that's about where we stand. At the time of writing this, she is still down there, and we're moving at the end of next month. and I'm just praying that nothing else happens. Yeah, your downstairs neighbor was being super obnoxious for literally no reason. They're banging on the ceiling, demanding that you shut up, but still refuse to give any proof that you're actually making any noise in the first place. And I can only imagine how annoying that must have been. And it doesn't help that the property manager is super neglectful and literally just ignores all of your concerns for months on end. So to that end, I don't blame you for trying to get out of your lease and move away, regardless of if that Karen's gonna be moving or not. And I just love that 1-star review that the entitled Karen downstairs was making about you guys, because it was an absolute mess. Like, she literally did not know what she was talking about, and it was all such a jaded point of view from her own delusion. So truly, I'm so sorry that you dealt with that, but thankfully it sounds like you won't have to deal with that for much longer, because this property manager and this Karen absolutely suck, and you did not deserve to be treated like this in the slightest.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for insisting to my husband and his parents that I need help with our kids and that we need to hire someone to help out? Because right now I'm being called insensitive and that I just want to pawn off my stepdaughter to somebody else. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my husband and I have 3 kids in our home. My stepdaughter is 9 years old, and I've known her since she was 2 years old, and I became her stepmom when she was 4. We also have a 3-year-old son and a 10-month-old daughter together. Now, to give some background information first, my stepdaughter's mom was not in the picture when I met my husband. She never wanted to claim any parental responsibilities, and when I met my husband, his ex had accumulated a lot of child support debt and had not seen my stepdaughter since the hospital. I signed up for being a second parent, and I love my stepdaughter. And in my heart, I consider her one of my kids just as much as my biological children. And we had such a good relationship. She would sometimes call me mom, sometimes by my name, but she'd always say my husband and I were her parents, and she adored her brother when he was born. Well, over 2 years ago, her mom came back into the picture and said that she wanted to see my stepdaughter. My husband said that it would need to be a gradual thing, but my stepdaughter had a right to know her. His ex didn't like that and sued for full custody, and yes, she did this after having nothing to do with her for 7 years. She ended up losing, but this started us on a step-up plan for her to gain some custody, and it has been an absolute nightmare. My relationship with my stepdaughter suffered badly because of all of this. Her relationship with her siblings has also suffered, and she is so rude now. She refuses to listen to me, and she rejects the 3 of us, and it's always worse after she sees her mom. My husband took this issue to court, and the judge made it clear that he will never sever the relationship between mom and daughter no matter what. So at this point, I'm struggling. I'm giving her the time and attention needed, and it really comes at the cost of our younger kids. But if I focus just on them, it's not giving her the time and attention that she needs, and the counselor told us that she needs to see that I'm not going anywhere, and she really emphasized that this was important. The counselor even spoke to the judge, who was a different one at this time, and the judge said that he was going to follow the previous judge's decision that contact is never to be severed between the mother and the daughter. But my husband has brought this issue back to the court because it was just getting worse. So now we're at a point where I can't be in charge of all 3 at the same time all day, especially now that school is out, but even during school time, it's too much. I told my husband that we need to hire some sort of helper for me with the kids, but he was against it and told me it was a big expense after we spent a fortune on court and therapy. His parents heard us talking about it the other day, and they jumped in to say that I wouldn't do this if all 3 of them were my biological kids, and that I just want to pawn my stepdaughter off on someone else. Now, I insisted that this was not true to all 3, and I insisted that I needed help because the kids will suffer in the long run, and so will my mental health. My husband felt guilty because I got very emotional, but his parents said that I just proved I wouldn't do this if they were really all mine. So am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I'm so exhausted and I really don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I think you're trying to do the best thing that's possible for you and your family, and if that means you need a bit of extra help to get that going, then so be it. Like, it really does sound like the biological mom is a piece of work, and she's clearly just an awful mother altogether. And for her to step in and be like, okay, now I'm ready to be a parent, while also basically turning her daughter against the original poster, like, that altogether is just so toxic. There's literally no reason for that. It is nobody's fault except for the biological mom that she was a terrible parent, and that she's continuing to prove that she's a bad parent. And you know what? When it comes to your husband's parents chiming in like that, they seriously need to mind their own business. They do not live with these kids on a daily basis, and they do not know how hard things are currently with your stepdaughter. So no, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because honestly, this situation sounds incredibly tough. My boss demands that we as teachers wear either dress shoes or boots to work, regardless of the circumstances. So I decided to maliciously comply, thus making them regret their decision almost immediately. Here's what happened. The superintendent of my old school was comically rigid in his views and seemed to have his mindset stuck in the 1960s. He told us without a hint of irony that the only way students would respect us is if we were dressed professionally. Not even business casual was okay for him. Faculty wearing sneakers or blue jeans was a legitimate cause for termination under our contract. The male staff dress code demanded that we wear a long-sleeve button-up shirt with a tie, as well as dress pants with a belt, and dress shoes or boots every single day. There was, however, a note in our single contract stating that the dress code could be reasonably relaxed if it was not possible to follow due to a medical condition, but unfortunately, no details were provided beyond that. Well, my wife and I moved apartments one weekend and my feet hurt, so I made the executive decision that that was a medical condition, and I decided to wear sneakers to school on Monday. I figured I could just lay low and keep my feet hidden from any pesky administrators, and I definitely knew that my students would not care. Well, wouldn't you know it, that was the day the superintendent and building administrators were coming around room by room to give the school board members a building tour. So of course I had to get up and greet them. Nobody said anything to me, but I did receive a nasty email from the assistant principal reminding me of the expectations set forth in the teacher dress code. There was no note on my file or anything like that. I only got a warning, which fair enough, I suppose, but it really pissed me off that they didn't even ask why I decided to wear sneakers in the first place and just sent me a warning with no chance to defend myself. And it was then that I decided to maliciously comply. Now, the dress code, as I mentioned, had said either dress shoes or boots. I went ahead and bought the most over-the-top, bombastic pair of boots on their website. I'm talking black leather with 3-in platforms, as well as chains, studs, zippers, and straps galore. They came about halfway up my shins, and of course, I tucked my pants into them. My students thought they were amazing, and there are pictures of my feet all over various social media sites. A few of my coworkers took it upon themselves to give me a stern warning, while others gave me a high five. After 4 days of wearing these boots with no incident, the principal ended up behind me in the hallway. Rather quickly, he asked me, "What in the world are those?" So I told him that they were boots to ensure that I'm in compliance with the dress code, and then I just kept on walking. That afternoon, I received an email from him stating that I was intentionally being unprofessional and that this would be documented in my record, and further dress code offenses could lead to disciplinary action or suspension. I immediately got in touch with my union, who quickly dealt with that in my favor, since they were indeed boots in the first place. I also explained to the union that I only did this because of the nasty email I received for wearing sneakers with my sore feet. The union rep immediately smirked, told me that she was unfamiliar with that rule, and told me to go ahead and wear whatever footwear I wanted, and that if anyone had a problem, I could just claim that I had sore feet. So, as a long story short, I ended up wearing my sneakers every single day for the entire rest of the school year, and I never had another problem as long as I worked there. This is honestly my favorite way of maliciously complying, because the original poster found a hilarious loophole and they decided to exploit that. And honestly, based on the way this school administration was acting, I don't blame you for a second for acting in the way that you did. My entitled boss demands that I work after hours without clocking in, claiming that I still have work that I need to do, and that he is going to have me fired if I do clock in to do this extra work. And so, after dealing with this guy for so long, and after putting up with his awful targeted behavior towards me, I decided to get some revenge by getting this guy in trouble in a way that he's never experienced before in his life. Here's what happened. So this story takes place when I worked at a casino, and for anyone out there that thinks it would be a great job, well, I can tell you right now it's not as glamorous as it seems, especially when you are working in the kitchen. Now, a little backstory is needed so you can all get the whole picture. When I started working at this location, I was young, still in college, and working 2 part-time jobs. At first, it was just okay. I had been hired on as a steward, which is just a fancy term for dishwasher, which wasn't too bad as it had been the same job I had at the last restaurant that I worked at. However, there were a few differences. I won't go into too much detail and name all of them, just the ones that are important to the story. The first, and the one I liked the best, was that since there were so many restaurants, and that the stewards were all in one department, we were shuffled around every day. One day you would be working in the steakhouse, and the next day the buffet, then you would go to the Italian restaurant, to the sandwich shop, in the bingo hall, and so on. This meant that you were always working with other people, you were interacting with them, and it gave you a change of scenery. I was told I was odd for liking this, but my counter was that if you did end up working with someone that you didn't get along with, then then it would only be a while till you work with them again. The second was that this place hated unions. Twice a year, there would be a meeting that everyone had to attend where they would make these long presentations on how evil and manipulative unions were. Also, there would be signs all along the employee hallways with anti-union propaganda. After working for the casino for some time, my boss approached me asking if I wanted to be bumped from part-time to full-time, and I said yes, as the benefits were really good. Not only did I get medical and dental insurance, but I would also be getting access to their lawyers as well as a few other things. I guess it was a good thing that I did, because a few months later, there were some major shakeups. I didn't know what caused it, but most everyone there hated the new changes. For one thing, the sick note policy was canceled, meaning if you were sick, it wouldn't matter if you had a note from your doctor saying that you couldn't work. If you didn't show up, they docked you a point. So this resulted in cooks and stewards coming in, vomiting on the floor and in the trash cans, because they couldn't afford to lose a point, as it would count against them when it came time for raises. Another thing they changed was that they were cutting the number of full-time employees. Now, I was safe along with everyone else who had that status, but if any of us left, that slot would not be filled. There would be only 2 full-time employees per department. And speaking of departments, that leads me to the next big change. Technically, the stewarding department would be disbanded. This meant that while our supervisors would still be there, it would be the chefs and managers of the restaurants that would be in charge of us. This meant that we would no longer be moving around. So I was sent to the steakhouse, and thankfully, I had 2 great female coworkers. In fact, we were so good that we were called AAA, as all of our names began with the letter A. As we worked there, I began to plan moving up within the casino. I knew it would be difficult, but I had a dream of buying my family's cabin from my parents, and I wanted to live in the country while finishing up college. Sadly, my first attempt at becoming a supervisor failed, and I ended up training the person who did get the job. Now, I didn't complain, but I did take it as a sign that I needed to up my game. Now, here's where our story really begins. You see, our head chef was being transferred to the Italian restaurant, and the assistant chef was taking his place, meaning that we were going to hire a new guy. So let's call this new guy Kevin. When Kevin first came in, he seemed okay. He wasn't great, but he also wasn't awful. He was just there, and we had no reason to talk most days, as we were usually pretty busy. Then, maybe a month after Kevin started working there, I had my first real interaction with him, and well, it was definitely something. It was at night with the dinner rush just starting to pick up, and I told my coworkers that I was going to fill up my water bottle before it happened. They said okay, and that they would begin doing the same once I got back. But before I could leave the steakhouse to go to the break room, Kevin called me out. He said to me, "Where are you going?" I said to him, "I'm just getting a drink before we get busy," and that I had already told the girls where I was going. Kevin said, "Then why are you using the waitstaff drink fountain?" I looked at him and I was blinking and I was really confused. I then said, "We were told when we started that staff are only supposed to get drinks from the break room." Kevin then got very aggressive. He said to me, "Don't give me that. I see the waitstaff getting drinks all the time. You are just going there to waste time. I am going to have to write you up for this." I looked at him and I said, "Wasting time? The break room is just down the hall. In the time we've spent having this conversation, I could have gone down there, filled my bottle with ice, gotten my drink, and gotten back here." Kevin then opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, the head chef caught sight of us standing there and came over to see what was going on. Before I could even open my mouth, Kevin spoke up, explaining the whole thing with a superior look on his face. But that, however, faded very quickly when the chef spoke. Employees are only supposed to use the drink fountains in the break room. The chef then let out a deep sigh and said, "I'm gonna have to talk to the waitress supervisor about this." He then motioned for me to go get my drink and said that he needed to talk to Kevin in private. So I did just that. And after that, I was pretty confused by what just happened. At first, I was willing to give Kevin the benefit of the doubt, believing that he honestly just didn't know about that rule, that maybe the chefs and the supervisors were allowed to use the waitstaff station, assuming that it applied to everybody. However, when I brought this up to my coworkers, they said that similar things had happened to them, that he had pulled them over for minor infractions of the rules, and when they just said they were sorry, he let them off with a warning. So they suggested that he was just marking his territory, and probably would have gone easier on me if I didn't question his authority. Now, it was after that, however, that I began to notice some things. Firstly, the waitstaff was no longer talking with Kevin, as they were pissed off at him for getting the crackdowns at their station. It was during this time that I began to realize just how often he hung out with them. He was also always calling over my coworkers, asking them to help him with a job, like peeling potatoes for hours while leaving me all alone. Moreover, whenever I stopped to speak with one of my supervisors, who happened to be a young woman, he would yell at me to get back to work. So it it was then that I slowly began to suspect that he had other intentions. Now, these suspicions were later confirmed during that summer. For those of you who have never been in a professional kitchen, it can get very hot. And in the summer, it can get really hot and the odors can sometimes overpower you. On this day, I was working at one of our massive sinks and I was scraping off some remains and giving the pans a deep clean when Kevin called me to the office. Now, this was really odd, as I had only been called to the office to get my 10-cent raises while getting a performance evaluation, and neither of those were to happen until January. So I was curious and I followed him to the small room where he gestured me to enter first. And when I did, I found a woman I had never met before sitting at one of the desks as well. When I entered, she looked up from her work to give me a curious look and then said to me, "Hello, can I help you?" Then Kevin spoke as he shut the door, walking in backwards as he did. He looked at me and said, "You stink." The woman looks up and says, "Excuse me?" Now at this point, Kevin jumped before turning around. The woman was looking at him with a rage while Kevin looked lost. It didn't take me long to realize that he didn't know that she was in there. Kevin looked at her and said, "Sorry, I misspoke. I meant that he smells bad. We're getting complaints about his body odor." Now, like I said, the room was small. So small that I felt cramped being in there with two other people. With the way we were positioned, I was pretty close to the woman who was growing more annoyed. The woman then said, "I don't smell anything. Sir, would you mind if I get a bit closer?" I said it wouldn't be a problem, and I allowed her to get close enough to sniff me. And she did it maybe 2 or 3 times before pulling away. The woman then said, "I don't smell anything." And that's when I decided to speak up. I said to him, "Look, if someone said I smell, then I'm sorry. But I'm working over greasy sinks full of chemicals, trying to clean off these pans in a room that feels like 100 degrees. And on top of that, the aprons we are given are not the best." To emphasize my point, I gestured to my shirt, which was wet and full of bits and pieces of fish. The woman then said, "Oh, I see. I'm gonna have to take a look at those and see if any need replacing. How about you cool down for a bit in the break room, and Kevin, I need you to stay. We need to have a talk." After that, 3 things happened. The first was that the stewards got new aprons, which made all of us very happy as they hadn't been replaced in years. Secondly, from then on, if Kevin wanted to talk to me about an issue, another staff member had to be there as a witness. And if there wasn't one, I was to find that woman who I learned was the steakhouse manager. And third, at this point, all bets were off between me and Kevin. While he couldn't pull me to the side like that, he did start yelling at me whenever he could in public. If he caught me standing around, like when I was waiting for the dishwater to fill up, he would yell at me to get back to work from across the room before going back to talk to one of the girls. He would just berate me for any little thing that he could, just to make me miserable. Soon, I came to realize that he saw me as an obstacle between himself and all the female staff members, as I was on good terms with all of them, and I even wondered if he thought I was some kind of anime protagonist based on how many I worked with. For over the next year, I tried everything in my power to stop him, while still trying to get that supervisor position. I went to human resources, and I was writing up complaints, only for them to ask, "What do you want us to do about this?" And when I went to my head supervisor, he just said that I needed thicker skin. It seemed like every day it just got so much worse. On top of that, my identity was stolen. The first targeting my bank account, while the second one was my tax return, with the bank refusing to help out and the legal department of the casino dragging their feet to help me. I was in the red for a long time, making my situation all the worse. There would be days when I would have to collect cans in the break room for gas, and I had to give away one of my cats as well. And with Kevin adding to my stress, there were days when my thoughts got incredibly dark. But thankfully, there were still good people around me. A bunch of my coworkers banded together to give me small packs of food, and some of the line cooks helped sneak out some meats that were about to be thrown away. Then came the big night. It had been a concert night on one of the coldest nights of the year. So cold that several keys had snapped in the door locks because they had frozen shut. I had managed to get to my car and turn it on, leaving it running for a couple of minutes as I headed back to the locker room in order to enjoy my only comforts left, that being the book I was reading. The plan was just to read a couple of pages and then I would be out of there. But before I could even get past the first paragraph, the doors to the locker room opened up and there was Kevin. He looked around for a moment before his eyes fell on me and a wicked smile appeared on his face. He looked at me and said, "Who told you that you could punch out?" "Not me, that's for sure. I just got a complaint from my night crew saying that your dishwasher is a mess. Clearly, you didn't clean it at all. Now you go back there and clean it right now. And I better not see you punching in or else you will be fired." And with that, he laughed as he walked out of the room. For a moment, I just sat there in utter confusion, wondering to myself if he could actually do that. I felt scared because if I lost my job, then I wouldn't know what to do. I was behind on my student loans as I had to drop out of college by this point due to various reasons. I was also behind on paying my parents' rent, and I could barely afford to keep the one cat that I kept who had been abandoned. For the first time in years, I felt so overwhelmed with fear that I felt like I would begin crying at any moment. But then the moment passed and I was furious. This guy's been doing this to me for too long. It didn't matter if he could fire me or not. I was so done with this. I had to get out of there. As I stood up, I found myself making a plan fueled on by my rage. I had kept the fact that my identity had been stolen from my parents, partly out of shame and partly out of pride, as I wanted to get myself out of this mess. Well, no more. I was going to tell them about it and ask if I could move back in with them. I would even ask for help looking for a new job down there. Sure, it would mean losing my dream job in the country, but at this point, being stable was more important. But before I could do anything, another thought crossed my mind, making me smile. He wanted me to wash the dishwasher right now without punching back in. I thought to myself, okay, I'll do just that then. So I left the locker room, barely hearing the security guard station nearby as he called out to me. But no, I ignored him and everyone else as I mentally prepared myself to do this. When I got to the kitchen, there were piles of dishes, pots, pans, and a slew of other items that needed to be cleaned in quantities that are only ever seen on concert nights. But I ignored that as well as the 3 stewards who were working hard shutting down the machine and emptying it. The night steward came up to me and said, "What are you doing?" I said to them, "I'm sorry, but Kevin told me that you told him that no one had cleaned the dishwasher and that it was a mess. So much so that I had to come back and clean it without punching in or else I would be fired." When I said that, the color on everybody's faces drained. When the first person managed to compose themselves, he told me that none of them had seen Kevin and that the machine was perfectly clean when they arrived. Now, when I heard this, it did make me feel bad as what I was doing would put them behind. But Kevin told me to do this, so I was following it to the letter, while also making sure everyone there knew who sent me. Seeing that I wasn't going to stop, and not that it mattered at this point as the machine had been drained, one of them went to get the night supervisor. While he was gone, the other 2 began to argue with each other over whether or not Kevin could order us to stay past our shifts and fire us if we refused. It didn't help that the casino had this nasty habit of offering employees a room to stay in, especially when the roads were snowed over, only to then make them work all night as if they were on call. When the night supervisor came, she asked me what was going on, so I repeated the story while cleaning the machine. She told me that Kevin had not spoken to her and was gone, before then stating that he doesn't have the power to fire me, but I just told her that I really couldn't take the chance. Then I asked her how to put in my 2 weeks notice. That confused her even more, asking why I was doing this if I was planning on leaving anyways. I told her that I would need to make arrangements for my future and that getting one last paycheck was very important to me. So I wrote up my 2 weeks notice, even mentioning why I was leaving, all before hitting the road. When I got home, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and with all the rage now out of my system, I just crashed onto my bed with my uniform still on. The next morning, I was awoken to the sound of my phone ringing, and to my surprise, it was the casino calling. The head stewarding supervisor was asking if I could come in and talk about last night. At first, I told him no, that I couldn't come in early just to go back home. However, he said that it was important. Now, I was curious, so I told him that I would be there in an hour or 2. When I arrived, I was taken back to the steakhouse office to find it crammed full of people. The night supervisor was still there, the night security officer was there, my supervisors were there, and several head chefs were also there. And the steakhouse manager was there in person, looking like her face would erupt into flames at any moment as she stared at the one figure who was still sitting. It was Kevin, hunched over in his seat, looking like a child who was in timeout. I was then told that they knew what happened. After I had my talk with the night supervisor, she went to security and found footage of Kevin looking out the door before heading towards the locker room and finishing off with him leaving with a grin minutes before I left the room. After that, she called in Kevin to show up the next morning. He tried to lie his way out of this, stating that it never happened and that I was just lying to get him in trouble. But the supervisors then said that it was a simple matter to check, as they have the security guard that was by the room and that they can check the footage. Suddenly and instantly, he remembered that he had spoken to me, only I had misheard him, and how he would never tell me to work without punching in first. The night supervisor and others in the room then asked Kevin straight up, "Okay, well then why would the original poster lie to you? Who told you that the machine needed cleaning? Why would he be the only only one who needs permission to leave. And they went on and on. And you know what? Over and over again, Kevin tried to lie only to then change his story again and again until finally he realized that he had been caught. The steakhouse manager then turned to me before apologizing, asking me if I would consider staying. And the head manager also apologized, asking the same thing. Now, for a moment, I was going to say no, but then I had a stupid idea, and that if I did this, then maybe I might have a shot at becoming a supervisor myself and not have to leave this place. So I said sure, but only if Kevin never talks to me ever again. If he has a problem with what I'm doing, he will have to run it by the head chef unless it is an emergency. And when I said that, they wholeheartedly agreed. Later on, I heard a few stories on why they finally acted. The first and least likely, in my opinion, was that this incident finally caused someone higher in the food chain to notice all the written complaints I had on Kevin and was now demanding answers. The second reason was that they didn't want to lose me just yet. Remember how I said that we used to move around from area to area? Well, it turns out there were now only 2 employees who knew how to work in every restaurant, meaning I could go into any area and know instantly where everything goes and how that area operates without wasting anybody's time. But the most likely reason was due to the union. News about what had happened the night before had spread throughout the casino faster than I could ever have imagined. And if they didn't take care of this, there was a greater chance that the union reps would seize on it. In the end, I stayed in the steakhouse longer than Kevin did, as he left about 2 years later. But before he did, I offered to throw a pizza party for everyone the day after he left. And I was honestly so glad to finally be rid of that guy, because Kevin made my life a living nightmare. Wow, this story is insane in my opinion. For starters, the original poster has gone through all kinds of nightmares because of this Kevin guy. Like from the very beginning, it really seemed like Kevin was only trying to keep you away from the girls so that he could try and have some kind of in with them. Like that really is like a big red flag in my opinion, because Kevin was clearly trying to be a creep of some kind and he couldn't get away with it with you in the way. I guess he probably figured that if you were out of the picture, then he could have some kind of chance with all these other girls in the restaurant, and that is so weird in my opinion. Like why not try to get to know everybody and be a decent boss of some kind instead of trying to ostracize the original poster and make their life a living nightmare in the process. Also, human resources at this job really sucks. You filed so many complaints. You explained that Kevin had been targeting you left and right and that he was making the workplace a hostile environment. You sent all of this in writing to human resources, and the best they could give you back was, okay, well, what do you want us to do about it? And it's like, oh, I don't know, maybe punish Kevin, give him a stern talking to, literally anything, because sitting there and doing nothing is literally the reason why all of this happened. Like that really is so awful, it's not even funny. But the biggest moment for me, and the biggest red flag that this job really kind of sucked, was the fact that Kevin not only lied to you about something that you supposedly needed to do, but also said that if you clock in, you're gonna get fired. That's not only unethical, but also very illegal. He probably couldn't get this person fired, but to throw that around so flippantly and be like, oh yeah, you're gonna get fired if you clock into work. Like that is crazy to me. So with all this baggage and all this evidence that Kevin is a massive piece of garbage, how on earth did he still keep his job? Like that is so crazy to me. If anything, it shows to me how corrupt the higher ups are for this job, and it also obviously proves why unions are probably a good thing for all the people that work there. Like no wonder they try to stomp out anybody from unionizing, because this place seems like a prime location to have a union to stop this garbage from happening. And you know what? I think the original poster's right. I'm sure this would have spread like wildfire, and some kind of union representative would have stepped in and been like, wait a second, this is absolutely not allowed. So truly, I'm so glad you were able to get away from Kevin, because what you described sounds seriously so awful. I can't imagine working in that kind of environment, but thankfully you were able to get away from him. And hopefully you never had to deal with someone like Kevin ever again. An entitled elderly Karen goes off and starts attacking one of her coworkers after they refuse to help her with something so mundane. And I'm honestly still blown away that she got arrested. Here's what happened. So I went to the hospital with my friend to see if I could help her with getting some paperwork that she needs. We were in an office talking to an administrator about getting the needed paperwork when we heard loud yelling and what sounded like things being thrown in the hallway. Someone opened the door and asked the administrator for help, so he ran out of the room. And my friend and I, being the nosy creeps that we are, we peeked out the door to see what was going down. There were 2 people in hospital housekeeper uniforms in the hallway with a bunch of other hospital employees around them, and the administrator we had been talking to between them with his hands held out like he was trying to keep them from physically fighting. One of the housekeepers was an older lady, probably in her 70s, and the other was a guy who looked like he was maybe in his early 20s. Someone said something along the lines of, "What happened?" and then chaos erupted. The best we could get out of what we heard was that this old entitled Karen wanted the young worker to take all the trash out, and the younger worker said no and that he was only taking his trash out. Well, this really pissed this lady off. She kept yelling about how she was too old to be lifting heavy bags, and how she was walking to Hades and back in this stupid heat, and how he, the coworker, was young, and it wouldn't hurt him to get some exercise. Then she started throwing things off a nearby cart at the guy. Now, by this time, security arrived, and my friend and I decided that being in the office with the door closed was a much better idea. We heard more yelling and crashing, and then it got really quiet. Then there was more yelling again, but it sounded like it was going down the hallway. After a few more minutes, the administrator came back in the office and apologized for the chaos. He quickly explained that we would have to come back Monday to speak with a different administrator about the paperwork that we needed, and I decided that it wasn't worth arguing at that point, so I just told my friend that we should probably go. Now, on the way out, we saw several police officers standing outside with a woman handcuffed, and then they loaded her into their vehicle. And as my friend and I got in our car, she pointed out that the lady being loaded up by the police was the Karen housekeeper from earlier. And trust me, when we saw that, we had a very good laugh over all of the chaos. Wow, it is not every day that you see somebody get arrested in the place that they work at. For starters, the way this entitled Karen acted was really out of line. Like, sure, the young man didn't take the trash for you, but that doesn't mean that you start throwing things at him like a psychopath. Like, seriously, just go ask somebody else to help out. Don't take it out on this 20-something-year-old guy who doesn't want to be around you. And clearly, I can see exactly why he ran away from this lady. She's probably super crazy, and I would definitely not want to deal with that either. So I'm kind of jealous that they got to see someone get arrested in that way, because that seriously must have been absolutely hilarious. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled neighbor nearly burns down the entire neighborhood as he starts a fire in his backyard, despite the fact that we are living in a burn ban area. And even though fire trucks showed up to put out this idiot's fire, we still heard this guy screaming up a storm in his backyard, clearly furious that he wasn't able to possibly burn down the neighborhood. And I'm honestly still blown away by this guy's entitlement. Here's what happened. So I live in a wildfire-prone area. Dry season just started this month, and the yearly reminders about fire safety and burn bans have gone out in full force. I live specifically in a pretty dense neighborhood with hundreds of houses and lots of younger families and school kids. I mean, you can always hear the kids playing outside. So here's where the story really begins. Our neighborhood is within a permanent burn ban area since it is a dense urban area, meaning that you aren't allowed to burn anything ever, no matter what. Our trash service supplies yard waste debris pickup, so it's not really an issue for most normal people. But one of my neighbors isn't a normal person. Yesterday, I get home from work and I smell an extremely strong smoke. From over the top of a neighbor's house, I see this plume of deep white thick smoke billowing over the whole neighborhood. This is blowing into people's windows and my house smelled like smoke. I could even see another neighbor closing their windows. Keep in mind, there's probably 20 houses within 200 feet of this guy's backyard, and he is building the largest backyard fire I have ever seen. Now, I'm from a rural area, so I get it. You know, I get that sometimes in rural areas, it's best to burn debris, and sometimes that's what you've got to do. But we are in the middle of a city with yard debris pickup at no extra cost in the middle of a fire season, and we're living in a permanent burn ban neighborhood full of kids and retired people. So I walked down the street to get a look, and lo and behold, my stupid entitled neighbor is clearly visible from the street, throwing wood scraps on this huge fire next to some trees, all while the wind blows the smoke into everyone else's airspace. I see him from the street, and as I walk by, I see a sign in front of his house advertising furniture refinishing services, and I put two and two together. This guy is burning treated wood scraps from his furniture business together with the yard scraps. Now, I guess someone else in the neighborhood had had enough of this too, because as I was walking back to the house to call the non-emergency dispatch, the fire department rolls up and four mustachioed dudes get out and head straight for his backyard. I went back home and the smoke disappeared soon after, and I can imagine the fire guys were not very understanding, and I heard some angry yelling from some distance away. My partner and I discussed it as we saw the fire truck cruise away, and we agreed that this was some entitled, stupid behavior that is absolutely fitting of our neighbor. As soon as the smoke cleared, I could see all of my neighbors opening their windows again because the weather is great night, with some kids eventually coming back outside and starting to play in the nearby yards. This stupid idiot exposed everyone to treated wood smoke, filled the neighborhood with smoke, and risked catching the trees 10 feet from him on fire and burning down an entire neighborhood. The reason we are in a burn ban area is because the houses are so dense that any big fire will certainly affect more than one home. And again, if we were in the middle of nowhere with no neighbors, I literally would not care less. But he is affecting at least 50 to 100 homes, and that, in my opinion, is absolutely unacceptable. Wow, imagine being so entitled that you try to start a fire in your neighborhood, especially in the middle of a burn ban. Like, that guy had no idea what he was doing. He could have lit that entire place on fire, and there would have been nothing that he or anybody else could do about it. So good for your neighbors for looking out for you guys, and for trying to keep this neighborhood safe, because this guy was completely out of line, and he had no business starting that fire in the way that he did. I just served the most awkward table of my life, as I was openly mocked by a woman who clearly was upset that I was joking around with her husband. And now I'm feeling like I might have done something wrong, as I now feel incredibly guilty about this interaction. Here's what happened. So as servers, you have to be bubbly and outgoing, and I read the room with each table. If they are striking up conversation, I will do so back, and if they avoid it, I just stick to the basics. Well, 2 couples came in yesterday, and one of which had a baby. The men sat on the outer booth seats, and the women sat inside of the booth. For reference, I am in my mid-20s, and the guests were all about in their mid-30s. The husband of the woman with the baby, presumably the father, was asking about dessert recommendations, asking about our outdoor patio, etc., which is pretty normal conversation, and there were some lighthearted jokes made throughout it. I noticed his wife was really not looking up like the rest of the guests, and mostly just tending to and feeding the baby. The rest of the guests were engaging, but the father was definitely the most talkative. About midway through their visit, I refilled the drinks. He made a joke about me judging him for getting yet another bar drink, and I half-heartedly laughed. You know, the kind of thing that a server would do. And as I was already walking away, his wife laughed in a mocking way and then yelled to me to say, "Oh, you think that's funny?" Now, I was already about 4 tables away, and I didn't even turn around, but I went and told my manager that I felt uncomfortable. At no point did I feel the man was flirting or talking any different than any other tables, but I felt so uncomfortable that she felt I would openly flirt with her husband, literally right in front of her. After all, he was the one initiating conversation. I really thought he was just one of those super outgoing, talkative types. I advised management, and they said I didn't do anything wrong and that she was just projecting her insecurities. I did ask them to give them a new server, but given that they were almost done and it was so busy, they said no. They said to not check in with them as much, and if they gave me any more issues, they would handle it from there. So unfortunately, I had to finish their service. I waited until their drinks were empty to stop by and drop off the check, and the husband was still engaging me in conversation and still making jokes. And this is like casual small talk conversations. I lightheartedly laughed, and this time his wife mockingly laughed right in front of me. At this point, I dropped our electronic payment device so I could minimize contact with them. I thanked them all for coming, and I wished them a nice night, and then I walked away. When I did this, I looked around at everyone, with the mom included, so that hopefully she didn't feel like she was being ignored or disrespected. My boyfriend, who's one of the male managers, as well as my coworkers, all said that I did nothing wrong as I was just doing my job. My female friend, who works in the service industry as well, said I should have not talked to him anymore the second time that he tried, and that I should have just walked away and acted busy. It made me feel bad, as I felt that the other 3 guests were still engaging, and I didn't want to make them feel brushed off based off of this one woman's actions. But they did not seem to take her side, as they looked uncomfortable. It's been a whole day, and I'm still feeling really bad about the whole interaction for some reason, because being mocked for what I felt was an unwarranted reason made me feel pretty bad and really upset. So did I do something wrong in this interaction? What should I do? You didn't do a single thing wrong. That lady was being a massive jerk, and there was no reason for her to treat you that way. Like, seriously, why would she act like that towards you? You're literally providing good customer service, and just because you're talkative and making jokes with the customer doesn't mean you're flirting with them or hitting on them in some kind of way. That's ridiculous, and there's no good excuse for that. So no, of course you didn't do anything wrong. This lady is clearly insecure, and she is definitely the one with a problem. So in my opinion, I don't think you should worry about this for another second. Am I the jerk for telling my grandmother that she needs to quit pestering me before I pursue legal action? Because I am at my breaking point, and right now I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so this is potentially complicated, so I'll try to make it as simple as possible. My parents were separated when my mom passed away when I was 7 years old. For reference, I'm a 19-year-old male. My father had a drinking problem and refused to get help, so mom left. He did not try to see me in the 4 months of us not living together, and then my mom was was involved in a car accident and she passed away. I was placed with my father initially, but his continued drinking led to my maternal grandparents getting custody of me. My father had a kid with someone else, while I live with my grandparents. And this child somehow ended up in his sole care. I ended up living with my father again not too long afterwards, but he was still drinking, and generally a lot more awful when I returned to his care. But he hid his drinking a lot better. When his next kid was born, and the mother of said kid was arrested, and things really hit the fan, I was once again placed with my grandparents, but only for a month. I went back to my father, and he had 2 other kids in his care, with a third child joining 20 months later. And here's the thing, none of the other mothers were involved. One is still in jail as far as I know, and I just don't know about the other 2. His mother was never around, and she was never involved, and I never met her in all that time or when my mom was alive. 2 years ago, my father passed away, and his mother arrives to take his other children while I went home to my grandparents. Now, this new grandmother wanted me, but the social worker agreed that I should be with family that I know. They tried to keep in touch with my father's other kids, but I never felt anything for them. I never cared to have a relationship, and I made my intentions known that I would cease all contact as soon as I was 18. So they only forced 2 visits before nothing else. And I did not keep in touch with this grandma at this point. She tried, but I completely ignored her. Well, 6 months ago, she reached out with a new phone number and told me that she wanted to be around her and the kids, that they needed a good, solid male role model, and that I'm their brother whether I want to acknowledge it or not. Well, I told her that I would not be a good male role model for them because I do not want to know them, and I would never show them love or affection or any care. She claimed I should do it for her as my grandmother, and I told her that I had met her twice before, and that was after my father passed away and not before, so I owed her nothing. She has contacted me dozens of times since then, and I have it all documented, and I need at least 8 months for it to be something that I can pursue legally, which I actually asked a few lawyers about this in the first place. So I decided to reach out once, and I texted her that she needs to quit pestering me and to forget my number and any contact info for me because I do not want contact with her or them, and this better stop before I pursue legal action. She responded that I was being cold-hearted, I was cruel, and that I was such a jerk who should be ashamed of myself for treating her and them this way when they did nothing to me but exist. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk. You literally have told this grandma that you don't want to be contacted by her. You have made your wishes well known to her, and there's literally no good excuse. And her age has absolutely nothing to do with any of this. The fact that she's coming after you over and over again and refuses to respect your boundaries, or even acknowledge them in this case, is completely unacceptable. And here's the thing, it sounds like your family situation was really sketchy and really rough. So I don't blame you for being like, yeah, I don't want to relive that in any kind of way, and I don't want any contact from you people. Like, if I were to put myself in your shoes, in my opinion, that completely makes sense. So no, you are definitely not the jerk, because I think that this grandma absolutely needs to step back and stop bothering you. Am I the jerk for not attending my best friend's wedding after I dropped out of being a bridesmaid? Here's what happened. So my friend asked me to be one of her bridesmaids at her wedding. She was my maid of honor 2 years ago, and before that, we'd always say that we would be each other's maid of honor, and we've been friends for maybe about 20 years. When she asked me to be a bridesmaid, it stung a bit, to be honest, but since she has a twin sister that she is close to, it made sense that she would be her maid of honor instead. The issue I really had with this is that at one point, before I did barely anything as a bridesmaid, she told me that I don't have to stand with the other bridesmaids during the wedding. Now, I found it weird that she was saying that, but I replied by saying, no, I want to be there with all of you. After a bit of back and forth, she admitted that she doesn't want me standing there with everyone because of my fear of being the center of attention and my social anxiety. She was worried that I would have a panic attack just like I did standing there at my own wedding. Honestly, it was bad during my wedding because I was shaking and I couldn't breathe, and everyone's terrified reaction made it even worse for me. I had to leave and come back to just me, my husband, and my mother just so we could continue our vows and such, while everyone else moved on to the reception. I couldn't even join them until I was drunk enough to not feel embarrassed. I've been to therapy since then and have made huge progress regarding my social anxiety, and my best friend absolutely knows this. I felt hurt that she didn't trust me enough to let me stand with the others. I told her I was so much calmer and less anxious now, and I won't even be the center of attention like I was when I was the bride. She said that she acknowledged my improvement, but that she doesn't want to take the chances. She said that she doesn't want to embarrass me again, and that she would just feel worried about me the entire time, and was also also worried that I would ruin the mood of the wedding if I did happen to have a panic attack. I eventually told her that I'd just rather be a guest if I can't do all the bridesmaid stuff. On the day of her wedding, I was just so sick to my stomach with hurt and with sadness that I was merely going as a guest to her wedding that I just decided not to go because I felt so left out. Well, now she is very mad at me for making her feel bad about her wedding. She thinks that I was trying to hurt her and make her feel guilty because of what she thinks was a reasonable request. I didn't mean to hurt her, but I just couldn't go because I was so overwhelmed with hurt. The people I've talked to are all divided on who is the jerk in this situation. I feel bad for ruining her mood on her wedding day, but I still feel that what she asked of me was very hurtful. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Yes, you are absolutely the jerk here. For starters, you clearly have not made a lot of progress after you decided not to show up to her wedding all because you were sick to your stomach with hurt and sadness. Like, I'm sorry, maybe take some Pepto-Bismol and show up anyways. You already agreed not to be a bridesmaid anymore, which, by the way, based on the way you're acting, I don't think you should have been a part of the bridal party in the first place. You had a panic attack at your own wedding, and you forced everybody to go to the reception just so you could do your vows in the first place. Like, it really makes sense as to why your friend was like, listen, you don't have to stand with us. I don't want to make you feel awkward. It's totally okay. She was more than willing to still have you as a bridesmaid, but she didn't want you freaking out and having a panic attack at her wedding. And the fact that you didn't show up, regardless of how you felt or anything like that, is more than enough proof that she was right. This very easily could have happened at the wedding if you were to stand next to her as a bridesmaid. Like, she is not the jerk for not wanting you to cause a scene at her wedding, because based on your reaction to her decision, it's pretty obvious that you would have made a scene in some kind of way. So hopefully you're able to grow up and figure your life out, because what you just did is completely out of line, and I do not blame your friend for being upset in the slightest. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my partner's friend in the apartment after she tried to kiss me while my girlfriend wasn't looking? Here's what happened. So my girlfriend has a few close friends. I've met all of them, and I get along fine with most of them. There was one friend that I had met a few times, and I did get along well with for the most part. Me, my partner, and this friend went out for drinks around 2 months ago, and the friend was quite shy and very socially awkward. She thanked me for being nice to her, and for being so understanding that she wasn't extroverted, and that it takes a while to be comfortable around people. I told her not to worry about it, and that I'm not going to judge her for being shy when I used to be really shy when I was younger. As the night went on, things were going well, until at one point when my girlfriend went to the toilet at one of the bars. It was then that this friend got really close to me and tried to kiss me. Now, it's important to say that I backed off before she managed to get close enough, and I ended up telling my girlfriend straight away. And after that, my girlfriend and I left the bar, and then we went home. For a couple of weeks, they didn't speak, but my girlfriend decided to hear her out and went to meet up with her. They talked things through, and this friend apologized to my girlfriend and told her to apologize to me as well. My girlfriend said that they're working on mending their friendship and that they've been meeting up once again. A couple of weeks ago, my girlfriend said that she was thinking of the three of us going out for drinks again, but I just refused. I just said that I think it's really odd that she is even still friends with her, but also I can't control her friend, and that what I can control is who I'm around, and that I don't want to be around her. But my girlfriend said that I was overreacting and that the friend said that she was sorry. Well, last week my girlfriend mentioned doing a movie night with this friend and asked if I would be home, but I told her that I was and that I don't want the friend in the apartment. My girlfriend said that I could always go out for the evening, but I refused, and I just said if she wants a movie night, she can go to her friend's house because I don't want her friend in our apartment. My girlfriend said I was overreacting again, and I should be fine with her friends coming around, but I refused to change my mind. So am I the jerk for refusing to let my girlfriend's friend in the apartment? Because right now I'm very frustrated and I seriously don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. And I also think your girlfriend's a complete idiot for bringing this lady back into her life. Like, does she not realize how detrimental this would be for your relationship with her? This friend literally tried to make you cheat on your girlfriend. And it's so telling that this was her plan because she only tried to kiss you when your girlfriend stepped away. Like, that's insane to me. If I had a friend who tried to do that to my girlfriend, I would lose my mind. I would never want to be friends with them ever again, and I would cut them off entirely. So the fact that your girlfriend is like, oh, it's fine, she apologized, just let her into the house. Like, that is crazy to me, and there is no good excuse. So in my opinion, I think you're doing the right thing by keeping your distance and staying away from this lady. She very clearly has ulterior motives, and it sounds like she's using your girlfriend to try and get to you. So it seriously sounds like your girlfriend is completely delusional, because the evidence couldn't be more clear that something nefarious is going on, one, and I don't blame you in the slightest for trying to avoid it. My entitled scumbag parents have moved in with me and my siblings into a house that we were renting. But even though they said they would pay rent and contribute to the household, they have, ever since they moved in, refused to do anything to contribute to the house. And right now, I feel like I'm at my breaking point, as I want them evicted from my house. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, my parents have been irresponsible my entire life. I've been homeless and in many uncomfortable housing situations, including living with extended family, living in homeless shelters and cars, or just straight up squatting in a house on and off throughout my entire childhood. In fact, during my senior year of high school, I lived in a motel. I turned 18 in late 2021 during the pandemic, and this is while my parents and two of my siblings lived in the motel. I was in my first semester of college and had to return to the motel due to financial struggle. During that time, my dad had told us that the weekly rent owed to the motel was paid through a COVID rental assistance program. However, they would spend their money on gambling, illegal substances, and alcohol, and they would never buy food, causing us to lose a lot of weight. Two of us were in college, and they would take the relief money that we received and spend it as well. Then they would turn around and criticize us for not having jobs, even though my mom didn't have a job either, and one of my siblings had to quit theirs because my parents would take their money while they were sleeping, and it got to a point where they couldn't afford transportation to the job. On top of that, I had no birth certificate or social security card because they lost it when I was like 5 years old, and they just never replaced it, so I couldn't get a job until I got them. It took so many months, but my siblings and I figured out how to receive my documents, and we got jobs to save up and move away from our parents because their irresponsible ways were keeping us trapped in the motel with them. Now, I've got to be honest, it was really hard to save and keep money away from our parents. At first, my dad would tell me how he made more money than me and that my money from my near minimum wage job meant nothing. He would let me know constantly that on a bad week, he made twice as much as me. But then he and my mom would turn around and ask me for money, and they would get mad when we would ask them why, or if we even said no to them. It was hard with them taking our money, but after 5 months of working, we had enough money to start looking for a place. We decided not to rush since we also wanted money to save for a car. We told our parents that we were looking for a place, and they said that they would also look for themselves. While still touring houses, we were given an eviction notice, and it turned out my dad had been lying about paying rent. We had no clue because he did say the COVID program was over and would ask us for the money to cover it. So my siblings and I decided to just move into any place that we could. We got accepted for a 3-bedroom house for a good price in today's economy, and we had our move-in day set just before the eviction date. Well, just before we moved in, my dad asked if he and my mom could move in with us for just a year and said that he would even pay half the rent and that we could split the other half 3 ways. Now, we didn't think he'd actually do that, but we agreed because we felt bad and we didn't want them to be homeless, and we figured that we could use their car just a little bit more. I ended up getting a new car the same week that we moved in, and then my parents' car needed some work, so we ended up splitting the rent 4 ways between me, my 2 siblings, and my dad. Then he crashed his car and never got it fixed because he had no insurance. After that, it continued to get worse. My mom would take my car, lie about where she was going, and not bring it back in time for us to go to work. My dad then yells at me for asking for the money in weekly increments, but never has it all at the end or the beginning of the month. They refuse to put money in the grocery pile, but always eat all the food in the house. They will take things from my room without asking. They never put gas in my car after using it. They argue constantly, and I was even taking classes at a local community college, but I had to stop because I had to work more hours just so I could cover for all the things that they would do and for the stuff they wouldn't pay for. And trust me, this is just a small list of all the things they do that really affect me. My siblings and I want to stay in this house because the rent is so affordable and its location is extremely convenient for its distance from shopping, recreation, and my job. I can work 25 hours a week and go to school while living comfortably. How do I get them to move out? Or do I just accept that my siblings and I will have to move and leave them homeless? What should I do? There is no reason why you should have to live with these people, especially with the way they're acting. They're literally just mooching off of you and your siblings, and that is absolutely not fair. So I don't know about you, but I would definitely start the process of like evicting them if I really wanted them out of that house. It doesn't seem like they contribute a single thing of value to that house, and in my opinion, that is not fair for you and your siblings in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my family move in simply because my 16-year-old son doesn't want them to? Here's what happened. About 5 years ago, my husband cheated on me and then abandoned our family. And this was an incredibly difficult time. I was left alone to raise our son, who was just 11 years old at the time. None of my family members offered any help or support, and we were essentially on our own. The only person who helped us was my father, who was a great support system both emotionally and financially. When my father passed away 2 years ago, he left me with a significant inheritance. This money allowed me to buy a house and provide a stable, comfortable life for my son and myself. Since my husband left, my son and I have become very close. We've been through a lot together, and our bond is incredibly strong. I mean, I would do anything for him. Recently, some of my extended family members have fallen on hard times and asked if they could move in with us. Now, given our history, I was initially very hesitant. I discussed it with my son, and he was very much against the idea. He remembers how nobody was there for us when we needed them the most, and feels strongly that they shouldn't benefit from our home now. Understanding his feelings and valuing his comfort, I decided to tell my family that they couldn't move in with us. And now they're upset and accusing me of being selfish and ungrateful. They say that I owe them support because we're family. I don't think that I'm the jerk, and honestly, I don't care what they think as long as my baby is happy, but I still want to hear other people's opinions. So am I the jerk for refusing to let my family move in simply because my son doesn't want them to? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because it really sounds like your family left you guys high and dry. Like, how can they possibly expect that you would extend the same favor to them that they literally denied you and your son? I think your son has it right. I think his intuition is correct. And in my opinion, this is them getting a taste of their own medicine. Am I the jerk for disinviting a friend from an event after she gave away my ticket to see Taylor Swift over to her sister? Because right now I am heartbroken, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So back when Eras Tour tickets were released, my friend, who we will call Sadie, said that she would grab us tickets and I would pay her back. We made concrete plans and I was so excited. I've been a fan of Taylor Swift for years, but I've never seen her live. I had to sell my stadium tour tickets back in the 2010s because my mom was passing away and I needed the money to help pay for medical bills. This past weekend, I was having a little get-together for a bunch of friends, and Sadie was of course invited. At some point, she pulled me aside and told me that she had news. She said that she was leaving in September, and when she said that, I was heartbroken. We've been friends for years, and I love spending time with her. I get all teary-eyed and I hug her a bunch, and said that we needed to get all of our thrifting trips in over the summer and hang out as much as we could. Then she broke the news that as a way to bond with her sister before she left, she was going to be taking her to see Taylor Swift instead. And when she said that, I didn't know how to react. She stood in front of me and Venmo'd my payment back. She said to me, "I just knew you would understand." I said that this was a sneaky move, and honestly, really a crappy thing for her to do, and that I don't understand how or why she would do that to me. She got defensive and said that they were under her name and that she didn't owe me anything. And I was like, yes, they are your tickets, and legally you can do whatever you want, but this is still a really awful and sneaky thing to do to your friend, knowing that there is no way I will be able to get my own tickets at this point. She just shrugged and said, "Sorry, but I figured you would understand." I then asked her to leave, and I told her to please not come back for the 4th of July party next week. I said I needed to process this, and that I'm really disappointed with her and how she's treated me. This is a girl who I consoled through breakups, as well as job losses and pet losses. So I was so heartbroken. Well, she looked shocked and asked if I was serious, and eventually she ended up stomping off and leaving. She then texted me later to tell me that she's around if I want to apologize for making her feel bad, all because she wanted to take her sister on a bonding trip, as she put it. I'm honestly heartbroken that I'm going to be watching my show on a grainy live stream instead of being there in the stadium with everybody. I was looking forward to this so much. I checked the resale sites and I had a sad little cry about all of it, and I'm now wondering if I'm completely wrong to have just uninvited her. Did I go too far? If it was in, say, a month or two, I don't think I would have, but honestly, I just need time. What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I think your friend's a massive jerk for going back on your deal and for basically ruining your plans. Like, seriously, you had your heart set on this concert. You've wanted to go to this for several years, and now, all because your friend's being selfish, she's gonna turn around and be like, "Sorry, I'm giving your ticket to somebody else." Like, that is such a crappy thing to do, and I think you had every right to say, "No, you cannot show up to my party." So no, you're not the jerk for disinviting her, because your friend did the exact same thing to you for your Taylor Swift concert. And in my opinion, that is completely unacceptable. Am I the jerk jerk for telling my parents that they need to learn to live without me, since I will be moving out when I turn 18, and I will no longer be available to take care of my other younger siblings. Here's what happened. So my parents have a lot of kids. They always wanted a big family and were not prepared for how hard that would be. I'm a 17-year-old male and I'm the oldest of 10 kids, and my parents have relied on me for so long that I don't remember a time where I wasn't treated like a third adult in the house. My siblings range from 15 all the way down to 4 years old. My parents are still technically able to have more kids too, because neither are 40 years old yet, and it honestly still scares me, I won't lie. We already struggle so much with 10 of us, and I know it would be worse if they added more, especially when I'm so close to moving out. In our house, we have a boys' room, a girls' room, and our parents' room. We basically all sleep in these tiny, stupid bunk beds in order to fit everybody in. Nobody gets brand new clothing, as it's all from thrift stores for me and the oldest of my sisters, and our younger brothers and sisters just get hand-me-downs. It was expected that I would step up by the time I was 5 years old. I had to make mine and my siblings' beds, had to tidy up after younger siblings, had to stop my younger siblings from climbing onto things, and I was expected to clean the floors. Over time, more chores were added to my list, helping to cook, babysitting, even when I was too young to really be doing that, as well as helping with homework, holding siblings' hands when we went grocery shopping. Also, they wouldn't run off, cleaning the bathrooms, cleaning both boys' and girls' bedrooms, tidying up if we had any kind of guests coming over, and the list goes on and on. My siblings weren't really given any chores, and I was basically doing just as much as my parents around the house. Now, when it comes to my siblings, they relied on me for way too much, from driving them places to picking them up from places, to me also giving them permission for stuff. They expect me to buy them stuff, and they come to me more than our parents, and sometimes come to me after our parents if they don't like what our parents said. They get upset whenever I try to get them to help out, and our parents won't back me up, so they have never done any kind of chore or helped out at all in the slightest. They get so mad when I ask, and they say that I'm not mom or dad, and then they also won't go to mom or dad for this kind of stuff most of the time. My parents are starting to freak out a bit because I will be 18 years old in October, and they know that I plan on moving out. I also work part-time, and that gets relied on to help financially, and between that and all that I do around the house, it finally dawned on my parents that I won't be around in a few more months. They started word vomiting all of this on me, and I told them that they need to learn to live without me because it's not my job to be the third adult in the house anymore. They told me I'll still be part of the family and that I can't just abandon them. But I said I will not support the household after I turn 18 because it won't be my job. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk because it sounds like your parents clearly just want you to be a third parent in this house. I bet if it was up to them, they would probably be like, no, don't ever move out of the house. Stay in the house and keep helping us take care of all these kids that we had. And that, in my opinion, is just not fair for you. You have every right to live your life and not be some kind of like parent to your siblings. I think when you do decide to move out, it would be really important to have copies of all your papers, namely stuff like your social security card, your passport, your birth certificate, all the stuff that you can possibly have so that you can move forward and not have to go back. That way they can never interfere with your life and you can basically have everything in check before you go. So truly, I'm so sorry you had to deal with this, but hopefully things get better in the future because you absolutely deserve to have freedom from taking care of your siblings. An entitled coworker commits a felony just so she can try and get me and my coworkers in trouble, as she claimed that we were being lazy on the job and that now she had proof to try and get us fired. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, I work in a warehouse for one of the major US packaging delivery companies. So something like Amazon or FedEx, something along those lines. I load a straight truck, but I also handle packages that mistakenly end up in the wrong parts of the building and need to be carted to the right one. I do this for 3 separate areas, which can keep me pretty busy. Monday morning for us was a nightmare. We were incredibly short-staffed and we were so busy. So on top of handling my very packed truck, I was also assisting another work area that was way behind, assisting my manager in loading a semi-trailer, and checking on 3 other coworkers who had multiple straight trucks to load by themselves. My manager asked me to do all of this since everyone else was also extremely busy. This meant my original truck would often get neglected and the packages would often pile up until I could get back to loading them. Well, this is where my entitled coworker enters the field. She's a coworker who has come back from about a month off. She's responsible for sorting packages off of one of the main conveyor belts and sending them to my work area as well as a couple of others. So when I'm not there to load my truck, it can get pretty backed up, and that stresses this this coworker right out. Another thing about this coworker is that she's been kicked out of every other part of the building for being too slow and for consistently complaining. If you ask her to lift a heavy box, she cries that she can't do it. If it's getting busy and packages are piling up, she cries that she can't handle all the work. If another coworker snaps at her, as it is a really stressful job so tempers can run high, and simply asks that she do her job, she cries that the other person started the fight. Her and I have had problems before, but I just try to ignore her. I don't come to work to start drama or fights. I come to work, I sweat my butt off, and then I get paid. So on Monday, as I'm running ragged doing the jobs of 5 people, and my work area was getting backed up frequently, I walk over to hand some rediverted packages over to a different coworker who was also backed up and running ragged. I then look up and I see just in time that this entitled coworker, with her phone up, was taking pictures of me, my work area, and my coworker's work area so she could send them to our manager to complain about how lazy we were being. Now, for those of you that don't know, taking pictures of personal packages and addresses is highly illegal. It counts as a form of mail fraud, which is a felony offense. If the United States Postal Inspection Services found out, our warehouse could have been raided and she could have been thrown in jail. So not only is it rude, it's extremely and explicitly forbidden in the workplace. So as soon as I saw her do that, I just started fuming. Thankfully, I happened to spot the upper manager across the way, so I stopped him and I told him what happened, and he had a stern talking to with her. I didn't hear most of the conversation, but I did hear her crying as she was trying to pin all the blame on another coworker for being overloaded with packages. I don't think she got in serious trouble this time, but I doubt that she learned her lesson. And if she does it again, I won't hesitate to go higher up, because at this point, I seriously hope that this idiot gets fired. Yeah, this coworker sounds like a complete idiot. Like, for starters, there's no way that she didn't know that you can't take pictures of other people's packages. Like, she had to have had some kind of training before she started there, right? So for her to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take pictures of this just to get you in trouble. You're being so lazy. Which is hilarious to be coming from her, as she's like the biggest crybaby on planet Earth. From the sounds of it, she barely does her job, and she freaks out anytime anyone tells her what to do. So if I was in the original poster's shoes, I would have done the exact same thing, because her behavior was completely unacceptable. An entitled Karen makes a scene at my library as she openly criticizes a group of young boys who are clearly disabled. And I'm honestly still gobsmacked by the way she acted, and I seriously hope she never comes back into my library ever again. Here's what happened. So I work at a busy public library. We have a large open floor for most of our collection where people are welcome to talk. We have a quiet reading room with awesome furniture and free Wi-Fi for anyone who wants a traditional quiet library experience. There's no talking and no cell phone use in this area, but patrons can talk in all other areas of the building. Well, this entitled Karen comes in with an ancient Kindle Fire and can't figure out why it doesn't work, stating that it's just so slow. Well, I realize that she has 45 programs running at once and 253 tabs open in her browser. I show her how to close a program when she's done and how to close out tabs in her browser. While I'm working on her device, a mom walks in with 2 profoundly autistic teenage boys. These boys are very sweet and they come to the library frequently. They both have loud verbal stims where they will make noise and even hum. Now, the mom is very mindful of this and gets them in and out of the library pretty quickly, even though we have told her that we are not a silent space and the boys are welcome anytime. Now, it's important to note that these boys are visibly disabled, so when they come in, this entitled Karen begins glaring at them every time they vocalize. Seeing her getting angry at these young men for something that they cannot help, I hurry up and I finish with her and get her ready to leave the library. As she stands up, she turns towards the mom in a proud voice and loudly states, "I thought libraries were supposed to be quiet. Those kids need to be controlled better." And she then actually smiles at me, thinking that I'm going to agree with her. Well, I match her volume and I say to her, "Oh, no, not at all. We are not a quiet space in any way. Most libraries aren't. If you need a quiet spot, please go to the quiet reading room." This entitled Karen lady let out an awful groan, and my next customer in line said something that honestly was so funny. They said to her, "For someone who can't even close a tab on a browser, you're being pretty judgmental, lady." And when they said that, this entitled Karen stomped off. And as a thank you for saying what we were all thinking, I gave this person a $5 coupon in printing for free, just as a thank you for putting this Karen in her place. Because trust me, that lady absolutely deserved it. Wow, how on earth can you be so obtuse that you don't see exactly what's going on? Like, those kids are very clearly disabled apparently, so it should be obvious to anybody walking by that the way they're acting is not because they're being like out of control children. Like, that is so disrespectful and just disgusting for that Karen to say. She has no right to sit there and be like, oh wow, you need to be a better parent. But I find it hilarious that the customer spoke up that was behind her and pretty much brought her back down to reality, because this Karen was being a complete moron. And in my opinion, if you're gonna play stupid games like this, you better be ready for stupid prizes by somebody putting you in your place. An entitled Karen encourages her kid to punch me in the face over and over again, all while I'm trying to do my job as a plumber, claiming that he has every right to attack me in her home and that there is nothing that I can do about it. So I decided to get some petty revenge by quietly packing up my stuff and quitting right there on the spot, leaving this entitled Karen to freak out, all because she paid good money to have me fix her sink. And I've honestly never dealt with anybody so entitled in my life. Here's what happened. To start things out, I'm a plumber, and my job brings me to the insides of a lot of homes. I have many funny stories, but this is really my only negative one. So anyways, this one time I was scheduled to go to this lady's house because she needed her sink fixed. Her husband had left her recently and she didn't know how to fix the problem. And she has called in a couple of times, as her husband would be gone quite frequently and couldn't fix it himself. So I was called into the home, and as I arrived, I was greeted by this lady's child. He yells to his mother and she lets me in and leads me to the sink that isn't working. Now, in most cases, the sink is leaking, but this one wasn't pushing water into the spout, so there was no mess that I could see. Well, right as I was getting started, this entitled Karen's child approaches me as I'm starting to work, and he literally just starts kicking me. Now, for the record, he's definitely not hurting me, but it got really agitating after a little bit, so I tell this kid to stop it. But when I said that, he proceeds to start hitting me in the face. So I went to the entitled Karen to see if she would do anything about it, but boy was I wrong. I went up to her and I said, could you possibly tell your son to please stop hitting me while I'm working? He's making it hard to focus. She looked at me and said, what do you mean? Is he hurting you? I responded by saying, no, not really. I'm just trying to focus and it's really annoying. This entitled Karen gives me a look and says to me, so if he's not hurting you, then what does it matter? But I said, well, I'm trying to focus and it's quite aggravating. This entitled Karen then looks at her kid and says, is this true? And this kid looked at her and said yes. And I was just shocked that he didn't lie to her. The entitled Karen then looks at me and says, well, it's my house and our rules are just different than yours. And when she said this, I literally could not believe what she was saying. I said to her, are you being serious? This entitled Karen said, yes, I am. My son is allowed to hit you because you are in the premises of my house. And after she said that, she crosses her arms and gives me another look. Well, after hearing just about enough of that, I begin to start packing up my tools and such, and I start walking towards the door to leave. The entitled Karen then looks at me and says, what are you doing? I pay good money for your services. But I just looked at her and I said, I'll make sure that you get a refund. And then I got in my car and I drove away. Now, from what I know, this hasn't happened to any other people who came into the house to fix it, as it wasn't brought up to me, nor has anyone left on her ever before. And while I did provide her a refund, I just hope that I never have to deal with someone like this ever again. Wow, I can't imagine just trying to do my job and then have some stupid kid kicking me in the leg in the process. And then when you tell the kid, hey, get lost, scram, get away from me, he literally just starts punching you in the face. And then you go to the mom and she's like, oh, he's allowed to do that. How dare you correct him? And it's like, what are you talking about, lady? You can't just allow your stupid kid to punch someone in the face like that. That's so inappropriate and so unprofessional. So you know what? If I was the plumber in this scenario, I would have done the exact same thing. I am not about to put up with that for a single second, and neither should the original poster. Like, that is so uncalled for. So good for you for walking out on that job, because that lady was clearly out of her mind if she thought this was appropriate. And for her to justify this as if this is some kind of like house rule, in my opinion, shows exactly how toxic this entitled Karen truly was. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for calling out a guest who wore white at my friend's wedding, despite the fact that the bride never made a big deal about it or even made mention of it to me and my friend before we confronted them? Because right now, I really feel guilty, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so this situation happened a week ago. I'm a 28-year-old female, and another girl who we will call Mary were invited to my friend's wedding. We were good friends with the bride in college, and we stayed in touch afterwards. The wedding was amazing. However, there was this one moment I had with another guest that kept me feeling guilty even when I was typing this. There was a girl who sat at the bride's family table, and she wore a bright white dress. I thought it was weird considering guests should not be wearing white or off-white colors to a wedding. Mary had had some comments saying that it was unacceptable, rude, and inconsiderate because she's never been to a wedding where guests wear white and then casually walk around, chat with people, and participate in activities. And you know what? I agreed with her because it was unfamiliar to me too. I suggested that we bring it up with the bride when we have a chance. However, we couldn't get a hold of her alone for the rest of the night as she was busy going around other tables and doing a bunch of activities. But I decided to take matters into my own hands, and I walked up to the girl when she sat down at the table, with Mary coming soon after me. I pointed out that she was being rude for wearing white and for following the bride around while showing off her dress to all the other guests. Mary supported me by agreeing and saying that the bride must feel extremely bothered that her guest was trying to ruin her special day. Well, the girl seemed shocked for a bit and said that she was sorry. She said that she didn't know and that the bride didn't say anything, so she thought it was okay. But I told her that the bride was kind enough to let her stay because if I were the bride, she would have been kicked out right when she walked through the door in that dress. Eventually, Mary said a few more things and then we left. Now, I thought my action was justifiable and I felt kind of proud for sticking up for my friend. For the rest of the night, I sometimes looked over the girl's table and I noticed that she didn't leave her seat until after the wedding was over and that she left with the bride. I contacted the bride a few days after the wedding to thank her for the wedding gifts and for inviting me to her wedding. Then I brought up the girl and I asked if my friend was bothered by her at all. To my surprise, she didn't and even felt happy that the girl did. She clarified that the girl was her niece who flew from another country to attend her wedding and that the dress she was wearing was a gift from my friend herself. The niece even sewed in 2 swans to symbolize my friend and her husband loving each other eternally. So that's why she was showing off the dress to all of the other guests at the wedding. My friend also told me that guests not allowed to wear white at a wedding is never a thing where she came from. So people just do it all the time. Well, at that point, I just felt so guilty and embarrassed after knowing this because the girl looked extremely down after my confrontation. I thought I did the right thing, but now I feel like a complete jerk. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now, I really don't know what to do. Yeah, I'm gonna be completely honest, I really think you are the jerk in this scenario. For starters, this isn't your wedding, and even though you're probably really good friends with the person who did get married, it's just not your place to sit there and be like, wow, how could you wear white at this wedding? What you did is so disrespectful from my friend, I'm sure she just doesn't like it. But it's like, sure, your intentions were probably good, but also, why would you go out of your way to speak on behalf of your friend at her wedding? Like, if anything, you should have definitely gone to her first, regardless of how busy she was, and actually asked her if she had any opinion on that person wearing white at her wedding. Because you don't know the real reason they were wearing white. There could have been any number of explanations that she could have given you, but it sounds like you didn't even give her a chance to explain why she was sitting there wearing what she was. So yes, I do think that you're the jerk in this scenario because what you and Mary did, in my opinion, was incredibly rude. Am I the jerk for finally snapping at my sister-in-law after she had spent the last decade making fun of my name, all because my name sounds like a girl's name? Because right now she is super offended that I finally said something, and at this point I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm 32 years old and I've been together with my wife since we were 19, and I met her family after we'd been together for a year. My sister-in-law was the first person that I actually met, and the first time that we did meet, she blurted out that I have a girl's name and then proceeded to laugh about it. For reference, my name is Sky. My wife told her to shut up and stop laughing, and back then it didn't really bother me. I just laughed and I told her that there were plenty of guys around who were named Sky, including my great-grandfather, who I was partially named after. I was named after my great-grandfather who went by Sky his entire life, and after Sky Matterson from the musical Guys and Dolls. So the first time was no big deal. Some people have asked me before if I felt like my name was a girl's name and not a guy's name, and I honestly never minded. My sister-in-law joked a lot about my name and our kid's name when we were expecting our babies. It got a little annoying, but you know, I was able to brush it off, and my wife would cut off her sister and would tell her to leave if she went a little too far, which only happened once back then. We didn't see her a lot for a while, but she got engaged last year and was around more, and she seemed to have calmed down a lot. But now that she's having her own baby, she has really started to test my patience. It started with her husband asking what she thought of the name Sky for their daughter. She joked that they couldn't use the name because she didn't want me to feel more like a girl than I already do. But my wife just told her to grow up, and then we left. The very next time we saw her, they announced that Sky was the name they decided to go with, and I just said that's cool. And then my sister-in-law said that she was surprised that I was okay with sharing my name with a girl. I told her that her daughter wouldn't be the first, and I wasn't insecure in my masculinity, and that I saw no problem with sharing the same name as a girl. The next time we saw them, we stayed out of her way for the rest of that visit, but then she joked that I had finally gotten embarrassed by by my name, and that now I was using my middle name because one of my uncles who was always called me by my middle name was visiting, and she heard him call me that. More stuff like that happened, and then on Saturday, we were back at my in-laws' house for my mother-in-law's birthday, and my sister-in-law was joking with some of my mother-in-law's siblings about my name, and she tried to involve me by calling me over to tell her dumb jokes. Well, it finally got to me, and I asked her if she needs to be so annoying. I told her how tiring it is to always hear these dumb jokes, which aren't really jokes like she claims, but it's just insults directed at me. She called me sensitive, and I told her that she's the person who hasn't given up on my name in over a decade. I told her that everybody gets it. She sees Sky as a girl's name, but she is not funny. Well, when I said that, my sister-in-law got mad. My wife told her that she was about to become a mom and that she really needed to listen to us and grow up. And we've told her to stop saying this kind of stuff in the past as well, but she always just says that she's joking. So am I the jerk for finally snapping at her? What should I do? This is classic bullying behavior, and the fact that this went on for a decade, in my opinion, is far too long. This should have stopped like a month in. There's no way that's appropriate. And I can also say personally that I wholeheartedly hate people who act like this. They disguise these awful insults as jokes, and they try to pretend like, oh yeah, I'm just joking around. This is like a mutual exchange of fun times. But it's like, no, it's not. You're just trying to say awful things to me and then justify it by being super toxic. Like, if the other person is not laughing and they're not engaged in this joke in some kind of way, then it's not a joke. It literally is just you bothering them and treating them like crap because you think it's funny. And this isn't an isolated incident. Literally, it's been going on for over a decade. You would think after the first few times that she got shut down, she would finally let it go. But now, as the magnum opus of her stupid bullying, she's now naming her daughter the same name as her brother-in-law, just to try and rub it in his face that you have a girl's name. Like, if this is not evidence that she is a terrible human being, then I just don't know what is. Because this is completely unacceptable. And I know if I was in your shoes, I would have snapped and shut her down in the same way as well. My mother-in-law wants me to change the name of my business so that my maiden name is removed and their last name is put in its place. And now, after being pestered about this for so long, I am completely lost on what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 34-year-old female and I'm a cosmetic surgeon, and I opened my practice last year. It's been doing very well, and I'm doing the planning now to open another branch at a neighboring state, which is in my in-laws state. My husband comes from a well-to-do family where his grandfather was very wealthy, whereas my parents were immigrants and had to get their masters here again while already having a PhD from my home country. I barely saw my parents growing up so that they could feed and house us. So I decided that my practice was going to have my mom and dad's last names. My husband is a great guy and his family is very nice, but they value different things and have weird priorities. I wanted a small wedding in the United States because I had another reception in my parents' home country. My mother-in-law offered to pay for a larger wedding so that they can invite more of their friends, but I stuck to the 50-person limit, which is a lot, by the way, as I wanted 30 at the beginning. And I did this because I wanted people my husband and I both knew and loved to be there. I didn't want my mother-in-law's stylist, her business partner, or their family lawyer to attend. She eventually complied and kept meddling occasionally from then on. I never changed my last name, but I would unofficially be referred to by my husband's last name. At work, though, I still use my name so that I don't confuse my staff and patients, but also to honor my dad for everything he has done all my life. Now that I'm opening another practice, my mother-in-law wants me to use the family name as the brand. I told her it would create confusion and that people might not know that it was mine. I built a lot of trust, patronage, and recognition using my brand, so I don't want to keep correcting people and to start from the bottom in a sense. It makes perfect sense and is the smart decision business-wise. There's also some legal and extra paperwork to be done if I decided to use a different name. She said she is proud of me and wants to show me off, and also her family name is very famous around here, so I might get more patients. She also joked that she should get some kind of royalty for that as well. For reference, their surname is an old American name that back in the day used to do bad things, namely stuff along the lines of corruption and so much more. So of course I don't want to use that name. I am Southeast Asian, my staff are diverse, and it's something that I'm proud of since we do focus on ethnic and cultural aesthetics instead of the generic white or European aesthetics. I'm walking on eggshells here, and I plan to let my husband deal with her. They always do a family dinner, and I see her maybe once every 2 weeks, and she always brings this up. Recently, 2 of my sister-in-laws have also been pestering me about it as well. So right now, I feel like I'm at such a loss, and at this point, I don't know what to do. This is so easy, it's not even funny. You just need to tell them straight up, no, I'm not changing the name, that would be
be really dumb. Or even just saying, no, I'm not going to change it. Like, the only reason they want you to change it is so that they can attach their name to it and try to claim some kind of ownership over your success. Like, they are literally just leeches, and they're desperately trying to attach their name to it, all because their grandfather was rich at one point. Like, these people do not sound like good people at all, and they're not trying to like brag about you and show you off. They just want to take away from your success. So this is a pretty obvious one, and I think you do know what to do, but I would just tell them straight up, no, I'm not changing the name of my business, because that literally makes no sense. And if they seriously, and I mean actually, get offended by that, then they are definitely the ones with a problem, because what they're asking is completely insane. An entitled jerk tries to embarrass another customer at a grocery store, but instead, I step in and shut him down, humiliating him in a way that he will never forget. Here's what happened. So I'm in line at the grocery store just trying to grab some quick lunch. There are a couple of people ahead of me, and the person paying at the register, we'll call them customer number 1, had an issue with one of her items ringing up at a regular price instead of the sale price. So she was waiting along with the cashier for a manager to come down to do an override. Now, it's a busy time at the store because lots of people are there on their lunch breaks, so naturally the manager is taking a while to get there. By now, the line is longer, and a few people leave to go to the other registers, and I just decide to wait because I'm not in a rush. Customer number 1 then turns around and apologizes to everybody for causing the holdup, but most of us just shrug and tell her that it's not her fault, because of course it wasn't. But this older man behind me, we'll call him the jerk, decides to start talking crap. He's saying things like,
"What's going on? She doesn't have any money to pay. You shouldn't have come to the store if you can't pay. You should know how much is available on your card before you go shopping."
He was basically assuming that she's stuck at the register, all because she couldn't afford her groceries. But like, seriously, what if that was the case? Times are tough, and you want to sit there and make someone who is struggling feel even worse? So this guy is glancing around, saying these things so that everybody close by can hear him, but not the actual customer, just so he can see who's going to join in with him on this rant. But as you can probably guess, nobody does. But by now, I'm super pissed. So I turn to him and I say, actually, something rang up incorrectly, and she's waiting for it to be adjusted. She's not here because she can't pay for her items. And it's so rude of you to even say something like that. So now everyone is looking at him, including customer number 1. And now he's embarrassed and super mad. He tries to say that isn't what he was saying, even though he had been standing there ranting the entire time. He then tells me, "Mind your business, little girl." But I tell him that if he's such a big man, he should stand by what he said instead of trying to backtrack because he's embarrassed now, and that maybe next time he will think twice before running his mouth and trying to shame people when he doesn't even know what's going on. By now, the manager had come over and fixed the issue. So customer number 1 thanked me for being so kind and then glanced behind me to give this jerk a dirty look. Now I'm paying for my items and he is still running his mouth. But I turn around and I tell him if he doesn't want to be embarrassed, then maybe next time he can mind his own business. I then turn and walk out of the store and I can still hear him yelling insults. But I'm just glad that I got the last laugh because I taught this entitled jerk a lesson that he won't soon forget. Yeah, this is another one of those situations where someone clearly has like no patience and they think they can say whatever they want and everybody's just gonna suddenly agree with them. It's also really telling that he would look around and be like, okay, who's with me? This person sucks. Why didn't they have any money ready for the register? Am I right? Like, that is so embarrassing as it is, but also incredibly cruel. So what if they couldn't pay for their groceries? The original poster has it right. Like, that is such a mean thing to say to somebody. So I think it's awesome that the original poster spoke up because this guy took things way too far. Am I the jerk for refusing to sleep on a pull-out couch during vacation, despite the fact that I paid for a bed? Because right now, my brother is very frustrated with me for saying no, and right now, I'm not sure what to do. Here's what happened. So I planned a family trip with my parents and my brother. Before I officially booked the Airbnb that we would all be splitting the price on, I sent each of them the listing, showing how many bedrooms there were and what accommodations we would have. I made sure to double check with my brother, as the house is only 2 bedrooms. One room has 2 full-size beds, and the other is a king-size bed. I asked if he would mind sharing a room with me, as 3 bedrooms in this area were harder to find. He said it was fine because we'd each have our own bed, and told me that I should go ahead and book it. Well, once our parents signed off on it, that's exactly what I did. When we arrived, before we even have our first night's sleep, my brother declares that we should alternate sleeping on the pull-out couch in the living room. But I say that I'm not going to do that. If he doesn't want to sleep in the room designated for us, then that's fine. But I'm not sleeping on a pull-out on a vacation when there's 2 beds. I asked why he doesn't want to share a room and why this didn't come up sooner, but he said that we're adults and he was too old to share a room. So I asked again, why didn't you bring this up sooner? But he just said that he thought I would agree to the pull-out situation.
situation. I then said that he should have assumed or at least had a conversation with me first. Well, he kept insisting, but I just said no. If he wants to sleep out there for the entire vacation, go for it. But I am not alternating when I paid for a bed. Now, him sleeping on the pullout led to several conflicts with our parents, as he would get mad if they came into the living room in the morning while he was still sleeping. But as they pointed out, it's a living room. This is a public space. If people wanted to hang out in the living room at night, he would start bugging us to go into our rooms so that he can go to sleep as early as 8 o'clock p.m. We're on vacation. We're going to stay up a little later and hang out. I always offered to let him sleep in the extra bed in the room, but he refused unless I promised that I would sleep on the pullout that night, which of course I definitely didn't do. By the end of the trip, he was irritated with all of us over this. My parents and I feel that he's the one who put himself in the situation and that there was an alternative of him sleeping on the couch, but he chose not to do that. However, my brother is insisting that I should have swapped with him, despite the fact that I didn't want to do that. So am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I'm very frustrated and I'm just not sure what to say. No, you're not the jerk at all. Your brother's an idiot and he's clearly super entitled because he thought he could spring this on you out of nowhere and you would just somehow be okay with it. Like, that makes absolutely no sense to me, and I really just can't understand his reasoning. So in my opinion, if he has a problem with this scenario, then he should have brought it up well before you booked the Airbnb, because his behavior was completely unacceptable. An entitled old jerk gets called out for cutting line at a Costco pharmacy, causing him to go in a fit of rage, as he said that because he was a veteran, he could eliminate the guy who called him out for cutting in line. And I'm honestly still blown away by this guy's overreaction. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I'm in line at Costco's pharmacy on a busy Friday afternoon. I get in line behind two people and there's no problem so far. That is, until I see an entitled old jerk standing a few feet to the right of us, clearly not in line. And here's the thing, sometimes Costco will serve you and tell you to hang by because maybe they're waiting on something, which honestly is no problem for me. Well, that is until one of the two clerks called next. This entitled jerk struts up to the counter, and when I see that, I'm pretty pissed off about it, but so is the first guy in line. He says, "Hey buddy, I believe I was next. I don't think you're in line." This entitled old jerk says,
I am in line. I'm in this line.
and he literally screamed this in response. He then points and says, "I'm behind her," and he was looking at a lady who was already being helped. The first guy in line says, "Okay man, just go ahead and cut then. We'll just wait over here." And he was positively dripping with sarcasm. Well, when he said this sent this entitled old jerk into turbo mode.
I've been coming to Costco for 40 years and there have always been two lines. I'm a veteran. This is not how you should be treating me.
And this old entitled jerk was huffing and puffing and scowling the entire time. Well, the guy in front of me said, "I don't care if you fought in World War I, you shouldn't be cutting people in line." Well, when the guy in front of me said that, absolute chaos erupted from this entitled old jerk. He is so mad at this point that he is sputtering, like he can't even get actual words out of his mouth. He then starts to do this kind of laugh, cry, screeching thing in front of all of us, and people are now walking over to look at what is happening. This entitled old jerk then says to this guy,
I told you I'm a vet. I can eliminate you if I wanted to.
but I then watch as the guy in front of me clenches his fist and he actually steps back into a defensive stance. And this is all about to go down in a Costco of all places. The lady in front of me finally snaps and says, "You two are fully grown men. Stop acting so foolish and act like a man." The entitled old jerk, looking around for someone to back him up, finally looks at me and I just shake my head. I say to him, "I agree with her. You cut in line. You need to own it and be a man." Now, by this time, the manager finally comes over. He pulls the entitled old jerk to the side and, of course, gets him his medicine. The guy in front of me turns around and apologizes to all of us in line and said that he shouldn't have shown up in the way that he did. But the lady and I both agreed that he was right to speak up, because that's exactly the way that some of these old entitled jerks do it. Because sometimes you need to fight fire with fire. Wow, imagine being so entitled that you say you're going to eliminate someone in a Costco pharmacy line, all because you're the one that cut in line and got called out for it. Talk about overly sensitive and literally going insane at the wrong place at the wrong time. Like, just think about what this guy said. He was implying that he was going to unalive this guy, all because he called him out and said, "Wow, you cut in line, good job." Like, that just might be the overreaction of a century. But even with that outburst from the old entitled jerk, I still think that everybody else involved in the story is completely in the right. Because for starters, that guy was clearly lying about having two lines, and even if that was the case 40 years ago, it clearly was not the case today. So why on earth would he think it's appropriate to walk forward with such entitlement, as if he owns the place place and has every right to get in front of everybody else. So truly good for you and everybody else in that line for calling this guy out, because his behavior was absolutely disrespectful and he definitely deserved to be put in his place. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my mom's husband that I never considered asking him to walk me down the aisle, since he is not someone who raised me and he only entered my family's life a couple of years ago? Because right now he is very offended that I turned him down, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old female and I'm engaged right now, and as you can likely tell from the title, my mom is married to someone who isn't my dad. They got married 4 years ago and they started dating about 6 years ago. I was actually living in another country at the time, studying overseas. I only came back home briefly for the wedding and only came back officially last year. So I haven't spent much time with my mom's husband, but being truthful, even if I had, given the age I was when they got together, I wouldn't see him as my dad or my parent, which is why he stunned me by telling me that he wanted to give me away at my wedding. He told me he looked forward to doing it for all 3 of his girls. He has 2 daughters and a son, so I guess he counted me as well. And he also said he was excited at the thought of me being the first that he gives away. Now, I just didn't like the way he worded it, where he says that he's giving me away, or the fact that he approached me about this when he had no hand in raising me. But my mom loves him, so I was kind. I said it was a sweet offer, a lovely gesture, but I wasn't very comfortable with that, and we could figure out something else for him to do if he wanted to be more involved in the wedding. When I said that, this was met with him questioning why I'd say no, and him saying that he thought I would be happier to have him do it. He said, given that I have no father in my life, and that I grew up with no close adult males, this is the only option that truly made sense. So I pointed out to him that I had my mom who raised and sacrificed for me, but he was like, yeah, but she's no man. And I told him that I didn't plan to have a very traditional wedding, so mom doing it wouldn't be strange at all. He genuinely never considered the fact that I would ask mom, and he became very emotional when I brought this up. It was a mixture of embarrassment, sadness, and frustration, and he was word vomiting all over the place. It got on my nerves because he was clearly not okay with me saying no to him. He told me that he should have been my first choice, and it made no sense that he wasn't when he's the only father figure that I have. Well, I told him that I never even considered asking him for the very reason that he's not my father figure or my parent, and that role goes more to a parent generally than a parent's new spouse. He looked so offended and told me the fact I never considered him a valid option really stung. He then said to me, well, in that case, you can't have my money. I asked him what he meant, and he said that he had been expecting to pay and that my mom had mentioned money, but I told him that was nothing to do with him. It was money my mom saved for my wedding as I was growing up, that she had saved long before he was ever in the picture. I told my mom what happened, and she was so embarrassed that he acted that way. She said that she would have a talk with him, but I got a text message not too long after from him that reminded me I had hurt his feelings and offended him. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you're not the jerk at all. This guy literally tried to step in and be like, well, you don't have any father figures in your life, so I'll just step in and be your dad and give you away. And you know what? I'm right there with the original poster. Saying that you're gonna give away the original poster sounds really creepy in my opinion. And also, you did not raise her. She literally only met you very recently, and you have played no role in her upbringing. For him to try and like stake a claim over that is just really out of line. And there's a level of entitlement there that is just completely inappropriate. So no, I don't think you're the jerk at all for telling the truth, because this guy needed to find out one way or the other. And in my opinion, I think it was better to break the ice now, instead of having to deal with this the closer you get to your wedding. My parents left my 3-year-old daughter in the middle of a swimming pool for a short while all on her own. And although she did successfully get out of the pool, my wife and I are very freaked out. And at this point, we don't know how we should address this. Here's what happened. So I'm currently on holiday with my parents, as they invited me and my family to their friend's apartment with a pool. They also paid for the flights, and my mom recently retired. Now, there's been a few incidents over the years where I've noticed that they haven't prioritized the safety of my 2 kids. And for reference, one kid is 3 years old and the other is 1 year old. For example, I walked into my infant son halfway up their stairs, and this is while they were supposed to be watching him. They also haven't separated my kids from their dog after it's growled and snapped at them. I've also found out that they adjusted the car seat that I fitted in their car, so it was easier to put the kid in, but now it wasn't installed per guidance, and basically I'm not sure it would do anything in a crash. Also, I've unbuckled unbuckled my daughter from car seat harnesses, and it's been very loose. And that's because if they tighten her in, they don't know how to loosen it again. Now, anyways, we are on holiday, and they offered to take my daughter to the pool. And they said this to her and not me, so she got super excited. I looked over at my wife, and we just kind of let it happen. I watched from the balcony, and they played with her, and she had a lot of fun. She had her float vest on, and she thinks that she can swim. You can take your hands off of her, and she can flap her legs and arms around, but it is definitely not swimming. She can doggy paddle a short distance, but that's about it. Also, my mom can't swim either. After I watched anxiously for about 20 minutes, they decided to come back up, and my dad, who had her in the deep end, seemed to ask her to swim by herself to the shallow end, where she can somewhat stand up, while he got out, grabbed his things, and then walked around and collected her from the shallow end. Now, my wife was completely panicking while this was happening, and ended up shouting from the balcony, which is not like her, as she is very unconfrontational. I watched and whistled to get their attention, but I didn't want to make the situation worse or into something that it wasn't. And in fairness, my daughter did manage to somewhat swim, and then walk to the shallow end where they collected her. When they returned, they said, "One little girl safely returned." And I said, "Yeah, just about. You left her in the deep end." And then they looked at us and said, "No, we didn't." And at that exact moment, my son fell and hit his face on a table, and I had to go and deal with it. So seriously, how can I readdress this? Am I overreacting in some kind of way? Bear in mind, I'm stuck in an apartment with them for the time being, and we want to enjoy the holiday as best as we can. What should we do? First of all, I don't think you overreacted at all, and I think your wife is the only one who reacted properly. I understand that you didn't want to make the situation worse than what it was, but seriously, they completely abandoned your daughter in the pool, and they expected her to swim over to the shallow end as if she's some kind of like good swimmer. But here's a fun fact, she's only 3. You can't possibly expect a 3-year-old to be that responsible and not mess up in some kind of way. If she were older, sure, that might be understandable, but she's only a toddler, like asking them, okay, go to the shallow end. Like that could have gone really poorly. What if she slipped out of her vest and sunk to the bottom of the pool? It doesn't sound like the grandparents are attentive to this kid in the slightest. There's a good chance she probably could have drowned before they would have even noticed. So in my opinion, I think it's time, at least while you're at this friend's apartment, to no longer allow them to watch your kid unsupervised. They clearly just don't watch the kids properly, and they're letting these kids get in situations that really could injure them. Especially the car seat situation that you're talking about, like that is insane to me. You do not mess with those things, and you need to make sure it's properly fitted, because if there was a car crash, you need to make sure that it would protect the kid. Because right now, it seems like they're being very negligent, or at least really relaxed about your kid's safety. And if I was in this scenario, I definitely would put my foot down and say that enough is enough. Am I the jerk for refusing to give in to my stepmother's demands during therapy by bringing in a letter that my stepmom hates, that my biological mom left me before she passed away? Here's what happened. I'm a 16-year-old male, and my parents broke up when I was just a few weeks old. They were never married, and they were like maybe 19 or 20 years old when they had me, so they were pretty young. They didn't get along so good, but they could be sort of civil to each other. It really depends on what was going on, I think, because sometimes they stayed away from each other. When I was 6 years old, my dad met my stepmother, and they got married by the time I was 7. But my mom and stepmother did not get along at all. I remember feeling the tension between them, and I remember hearing my stepmother grumble to dad about mom if I had to go to their house instead of home with mom after they had been all in the same place. It was extra bad if they all showed up to my dance recitals too. My stepmother wanted to be the one doing some of the dance stuff. She used to tell my dad that she didn't think that she'd have much in common with a young boy, but dance could be our thing, and mom was hogging it by always being there. Mom was the person who signed me up for dance, and dad wasn't on board back then. And my guess is because he's too much of a macho dude for that. My mom got sick when I was 8 years old, and she passed away when I was 10. The worst part of that time was when she got too sick to take care of me and had to live with my dad all the time. I still saw my mom, but it wasn't the same. Before she died, she wrote me a letter and told me to read it whenever I needed to feel close to her. She said she put all her love into that letter, and she also left me cards for milestones. But my mom's original letter made my stepmother so angry. I never call my stepmother mom or anything like that, and I never call her my parent either. I know that she technically is, but I always disliked the idea of her being called that because she hated mom so much and felt like mom needed to take a step back from stuff just to let her take over for them. Kind of like with the dance situation. My stepmother is pissed that my mom never mentioned her in the letter and that mom never let my stepmother in. She felt like mom put a final wall between us and made sure that she would always be the outsider in my eyes, and I would always long for my mom and reject her as a mother figure. Our relationship relationship is very tense, while things with my dad are better than they were when I was younger. He ended up getting softer, so he said the three of us should go to therapy together to figure stuff out. After 2 months of therapy, my stepmother wants my mom's letter brought into sessions, and the counselor feels like that's a good idea and we should discuss the content of it since it is such a point of tension. But I don't want my stepmother anywhere near it. She is poison when it comes to my mom, and I don't want her to taint it in the slightest. The counselor told me that it would only benefit all of us. My stepmom got mad and said even a piece of paper is more important to me than she is. We had 2 sessions since then, and I still did not bring it, and this made my stepmother's anger even worse. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because it sounds like your stepmom is using therapy as a weapon against you. She's literally using this counselor as like a hammer to try and take out your mom once and for all, because I can guarantee you if you brought that letter into therapy, your stepmother is only going to tear it apart and try and taint your memory of your mom, and that is not fair for you in the slightest. And it's also a red flag to me that the counselor can't see that this is really uncomfortable for you. Like, sure, it's a point of contention for the stepmom, but only because it seems like she's a narcissist and very controlling. Like, if I was in your shoes, I would feel the exact same way. Also, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have like a safe box or some kind of like box in general where you can store these precious items that your mom gave you, because from the sounds of it, it seems like your stepmom would destroy all of that if given the chance. She's clearly jealous of your mom and the way that she raised you, and the fact that you value her over your stepmom. But then again, who can blame you? Your stepmom's behavior is super toxic. So no, I don't think you're the jerk at all, but I really think you need to keep those items safe from your stepmother, because I guarantee you if you give her the chance, she 100% would definitely destroy it. A group of old entitled Karens are constantly hassling me when I try to take my dog out to go to the bathroom, and I'm honestly so frustrated with this, and right now I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I live in a condominium complex, and my boyfriend owns our unit. We pay a monthly HOA fee just like everybody else, but it seems like when I take my dog out to relieve herself, some of the old people here like to tell me where she can and cannot pee. If she pees on certain plots of grass and they see me, they come out and say that she can only pee in the dog park, and the dog park that they're referring to is literally just a big plot of grass with benches in the back of the complex that these annoying entitled Karens designated as a space for dogs. Now mind you, these people don't own any of the grass here. The only personal property is their own unit, backyard, and patio, and anything outside of that is community property that all of us are paying for the upkeep of through the HOA. There's a lady who lives next to me who loves to open her door and stand outside to watch me occasionally, and this lady is such a menace. This morning, my dog was peeing on grass next to her unit, and she opens the door to fuss at my dog to go away, and she just has this attitude as she tells me that the dog needs to pee in the dog park. Well, I raised my voice back, and I told her that my dog can pee right here, and then I walked away once my dog was done. Anyways, it seems like I keep getting in conflicts with these people, and it even got really heated once. I'm not sure what the best course of action is, but I've already spoken with management, and they told me my dog is free to go on whichever grass she wants, but this is literally just the way some of these old people are who have lived here for a while. So it seems like there's not much I can do besides get into arguments with these awful people. And I've even read through the entire HOA manual when I first moved here, and I've spoken to management the first time one of these people tried to start an issue, and they really did confirm that my dog can go to the bathroom anywhere she likes, and that no plot of community grass is off limits. I'm honestly just so done with these entitled Karens, and I seriously now don't know what to do. Wow, these people are obnoxious. Like, you have a neighbor who is literally standing by her front door and just watching you. Imagine being such a boring person that all you can ever do is bother somebody else who is literally just trying to live their life. Like, you're not doing anything wrong, you're just trying to walk your dog. Meanwhile, Karen and her gang of idiots are trying to make up rules in the HOA by being like, oh yeah, you can only have your dog go to the bathroom in that corner. Like, that is such an obnoxious attitude, and seriously, I would not put up with that. So in my opinion, I think it might be time to have some kind of like certified letter or some kind of notice publicly posted so these people can see that, because clearly these old people just like to make up their own rules and have some kind of control over the area they live in. Because I know if I was in your shoes, I would be reacting the exact same way. I would be very upset and very annoyed, because the way these Karens are talking to you, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for asking our neighbor to have her adult son turn his music down at midnight? Because after we came over, she slammed the door in our faces, and at this point, we seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, our neighbor is an older woman who lives alone. Her Her son, who is in his mid-40s, lived with her for a while, moved out to his older sister's place, but frequently comes over and spends the night at his mom's house. His bedroom window is directly across from mine, and he loves house music, which is dope because I do too. However, he has a habit of blasting his music during the late night hours, and this is typically from 11 o'clock p.m. until 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, fast forward to tonight, and it's now 11 o'clock, and he is starting to play his house music. I've got my window open because it is midsummer, and it gets really hot here at night. He's got his window open as well, so the music is blaring directly into my room. Fortunately, he's got good taste in music, but unfortunately, I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning for work. So we let it rock out until midnight, and sure enough, he is still going hard. I'm talking like 15-minute long 7 Nation Army remix hard. It ends up getting louder, at which point we decide to go next door to request that he either turn it down just a little bit or close his window. Mind you, we had no intention of asking him to shut it off. We just wanted him to turn it down or close the window, just so every lyric and instrument isn't audible in my room. So that's exactly what we do. We go next door, we knock, and his mom answers the door. At first, she doesn't even open the door. She just looks at us through the side window and says, "What?" So we calmly, politely request that she have her son turn the music down or even just shut his window, as we are trying to sleep in preparation for the Monday workday. Well, she then opens the door, and before we can even explain further, she shouts at us,
He's hardly here, so it's not like it's happening all the time. So please, don't complain.
I try to explain that we aren't there to try and bother him, but before I can even finish, she says to me,
Well, that's too bad.
and then proceeds to slam the door in our faces. We go back to the house, and I'm honestly flabbergasted. We usually get along fine with the both of them. In fact, I was just in the yard chatting with her for an hour about our local mourning dove population not even a month ago. I used to bring her son fruit from our yard when the season was on. Everything was normal. So seriously, where is this hostility coming from? Like, I have no idea. So what gives? Am I the jerk here? Were we being totally unreasonable? It feels bad considering we've gotten along well as neighbors in all the years that we've lived beside one another. What should we do? I don't think you're the jerk at all. It is literally midnight going into the Monday work week. There is no reason for him to be playing music that loudly. How can this lady not understand that maybe people need to get up early for work the next day, and that playing music as loud as possible at midnight is not the appropriate thing to do to your neighbors? So no, you're definitely not the jerk, and I know if that was me, especially after this interaction, I would be calling for a noise complaint the next time he tries to do that. Because hey, you've tried to be reasonable, you tried to take the nice approach, but these people shut you down. And in my opinion, if they want to play stupid games, then they are more than welcome to win stupid prizes. An entitled old jerk decides to block traffic as he demands that I move my semi-truck out of his way instead of him just backing up maybe 10 feet so I can finish my turn. Things escalated to the point where this guy called the police on me, saying that he was going to get me arrested for blocking traffic, but instead, he's the only one out of the two of us that ended up getting charged with multiple crimes. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a semi-driver by trade, and I see a lot of stupidity on the roads. But trust me, this situation absolutely still takes the cake. Last fall, I was on a pretty busy road making a left turn into a small 2-lane industrial park. It's a very standard move and a part of my regular route, and I've made this turn about 50 or 60 times before. With the available turning space and the length of my truck, the end of my trailer drags through the oncoming lane for maybe a few feet. It's very common on smaller roads, and it's not really a big deal. I wait until the space is clear, and if anyone approaches while I'm turning, they yield until I'm through with the turn. And this happens maybe 20 times a day. Well, not today though. Today, the world's most important man is out on the road, and he will stop for nothing, not even the laws of the road or physics itself. Halfway through my turn, this entitled jerk comes flying up the road. He screeches to a halt and lays on his horn. I can see that if I keep going through my turn, I will crush his car like a beer can with my trailer. So I just stop my truck mid-turn. This entitled jerk is honking madly, and I can see him screeching through his windshield. But I think to myself, okay, whatever. But at this point, I am wedged in place. If I go forward, I will hit this guy. And if I go backwards, I will be blind backing onto a busy road. And I would not do that for a winning lottery ticket. All that's left to do is set my air brakes and wait for the lead cake synapses in this idiot's brain to figure things out. But unfortunately, that was a fat chance. After a solid 15 seconds of laying on the horn, this entitled jerk puts his car in park and gets out to come storming up to my window. His fat face is the color of a tomato, and he starts to do that stupid thing where they shake their finger at you. Now, being the jerk that I am, I smile and and wave at him, which just pisses him off even more. He climbs up the steps of my truck and tries to open the door. Then he starts knocking on the window when he figures out that it's locked. I roll the window halfway down and I put on my old retail customer service voice. I say to him, "Can I help you, sir?" This guy looks at me and says,
"You're in the way. You need to move right now."
I say to him, "Sir, I can't go forwards or backwards without hitting you or another car. If you would just back up a few feet, I'll be able to clear your car and be on my way." He just looks at me and says,
"I'm not gonna move. You're in my way. You're obstructing traffic."
but I respond to him by saying, "Well, I guess we'll just have to sit here then." I then pivot my feet, I throw my feet up on the console, and I pull out my phone. At this point, I'm blocking both lanes of traffic on this small road, and cars are backing up on the larger road to turn in.
"You're obstructing traffic and endangering people. I'm calling the police and they're going to arrest you."
But I just say to him, "You go ahead and do that." And then I roll up my window without looking up from my phone for a second. He stalks back to his car, gets in, and starts yelling into his phone. As he's yelling at what I only assume is some poor 911 operator, who is at this point definitely not getting paid enough, I see a police officer coming from behind my truck and start walking towards my cab. She looks around, clocks the angry jerk on the phone and where he's parked, and climbs up onto my steps. She looks at me and says, "Did you hit his car?" I respond by saying, "No, ma'am." She then says, "Okay, so is he refusing to back up?" And I respond again by saying, "Yes, ma'am." She looks at me and then over at the guy freaking out in his car, and then she just gives out a sigh and says, "Okay, sit tight." She walks back and taps on this guy's window. He gets out of the car, gesturing at me and yelling at her. I can't hear what they're saying, but he's obviously getting angrier, and I'm starting to wonder if he's gonna have a stroke before he can move his car. By this point, 2 other officers have joined the conversation, and one of them, that looks massive with a bulletproof vest, starts leaning over this jerk and gesturing towards my truck. This entitled jerk gets back into his car, slams the door, backs up, and as I pass by, he gets back out of the car and starts looking at the ground as one of the officers pulls out a notepad. I come to find out from my friends working in the industrial park that he is a known nuisance in the area, and this was evidently the last straw for these cops, who hear from him about petty, stupid concerns every single day. They confirmed to me that he was hit with tickets for obstructing traffic, aggressive driving, and failure to yield. And the cherry on top was that his Back the Blue bumper sticker didn't help him one bit. So I'm honestly glad to see this guy get put in his place, because trust me, based on the way he was acting, he absolutely deserved it. Wow, it's insane to me that someone could be that entitled and so obtuse to the surroundings around them. It would have taken this entitled jerk what, maybe 5 seconds to back up just a little bit? That would have solved all his problems right away, and he could have avoided getting all these tickets and all these violations against him. And the fact that he's a known nuisance to these cops and everybody around here, in my opinion, is just so much better, because now he's just never going to get a break. He's always going to be on their radar, and anytime he calls the cops, they're probably not going to believe him. They're going to see him as the boy who cried wolf or something like that. But I also love the way the original poster reacted to this. They didn't get angry and start yelling at this guy. They just leaned back and let this guy get angry himself by literally doing nothing, by sitting there and saying, "Oh yeah, just call the cops." They pissed this guy off more than they probably thought they would. But regardless, it is so nice to see people who act like this get put in their place in the way that they absolutely deserve. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled friend is angry with me that I hugged her boyfriend after meeting him for the first time. And despite the fact that she's hugged my fiance without me ever having a problem, she now seems incredibly upset. And at this point, I am at such a loss and I now just don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my friend finally introduced me to her boyfriend after 2 years of being together. She kept me away from him all this time, almost like she never wanted me to see him. Their relationship is very weird to say the least, and the stuff she tells about him was bad, so I just can't figure out why she's with him. The time she plans on seeing him when I'm around, she keeps me far away from him. In fact, one time she kept me in her car as she got out to see him and made me promise her not to get out of the car to see him. She even suggested that she'll park blocks away from his house, and I told her not to do that because it would look bad. So it's clear to me that she just really doesn't want me near him. My fiance is in another country until August, and there were many times that she would tell me that we should wait until my fiance comes home for me to be able to hang out with her boyfriend. Before my fiance and I did long distance, he would hang out with me and my friends a lot, and every time my friend would see him, she would hug him as a way to greet him and as a way to say goodbye to him. Now, it's important to know that I did not see this as weird because because I know that's very normal here in the United States. My fiance is from South Korea, so for him as a person, he doesn't like hugging anyone that's not me, but he would be respectful when she hugs him by gently patting her back. So last night was the night I met my friend's boyfriend for the first time, and it was very awkward to say the least. When we walked into the restaurant, he didn't hug her or show any display of affection to greet her, but instead he walked next to me and talked to me as we walked to our table. Now the whole dinner was incredibly awkward as nobody was talking, so I did all the talking and it was bad since no one else said anything. Even my friend didn't talk at all, and she said she wasn't talking because she was so tired. So basically, I started all the conversations and asked questions to her boyfriend, and trust me, it really was as awkward as you think it sounds. When the boyfriend talked, he would just talk so quietly it sounded like a mumble, and my friend just didn't talk much, and when she did, she would ask me and her brother what we think of her boyfriend, almost like we had to answer that question right there in front of him. When she tried to show public displays of affection towards him, I noticed that he would just move away from her or seem very awkward. I mean, she's literally asking me and my brother what we think of her boyfriend right in front of him, and that's already weird enough. Like, why would you expect an answer? She would also tell us the story of how they met and ask us our perspective about her boyfriend, and I noticed that whenever she were to talk, he would just look as if he was disassociating. Needless to say, the whole dinner was the most awkward thing on planet Earth. Towards the end of the night, my friend's brother gave him a bro hug when they were leaving. I was leaving with my friend's brother since he was my ride, so I went in to give him a hug, but then I realized and I said, "Oh wait, high five maybe?" But he said that he's cool to get a hug. As I was leaving with my friend's brother, I told him how awkward that was, and he told me not to worry. Well, when we were driving back home, my friend called to ask how we thought the night went, and then she said, "I was surprised you hugged him," and she did not sound happy when she said that. I apologized and told her that it was stupid, and I just thought we were doing that because the brother went in for a bro hug. I apologized more after that, and even the brother doesn't understand why it's such a big deal. But also, there were times when she hugged my fiance to greet him and say goodbye to him. I don't know why it's an issue if she also hugged him. Now, I didn't mention that, but I thought about it and how that makes no sense. I feel like I handled this whole night incredibly wrong. So what was I supposed to do in this situation? I really need some advice on this, as I just don't know if I did something wrong, or if I'm the entitled one, or if it's just the other way around. What should I do? No, you didn't do anything wrong, because it sounds like your friend and her boyfriend are having like a lot of issues, and she's clearly just projecting those onto you. She would literally rather park around the block so that you don't see her boyfriend, instead of being like, "Oh, by the way, this is my boyfriend." Like, any kind of friend who would treat you like that is just super weird in my opinion. She clearly just doesn't trust you, and in my opinion, that is so inappropriate. So no, of course you didn't do anything wrong. Your friend is obviously very insecure and has a lot of problems, and that is something that's on her shoulders to deal with and not yours. Am I the jerk for asking my social worker to let me live with my grandma instead of my aunt? Because right now, my aunt is devastated by my choice, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for starters, my mom lost custody of me 3 years ago. She has always had issues, and she's been in jail a few times. I'm a 15-year-old male, and I have no dad in my life, so I would go to my aunt's house typically until my mom got out and took me back. But then, just like that, she lost custody of me for real, and my aunt is the one who took me in. But unfortunately, my aunt was going through her own really difficult times. My uncle, her husband, had passed away, and she was left alone with her son, who's 10 years old. A few months later, she met a guy that I will call James for the sake of the story, and they hit it off and ended up moving in together and getting married by the end of that same year. James has a daughter who's 11 years old, and James's ex had divorced him a few years before and wasn't around for their daughter. She didn't remember her mom and was feeling mixed about the blended family. Sometimes she really just wanted a mom, and other times she just didn't want to have a new mom or share her dad with my cousin. The two kids could not get along, and living with them was absolutely miserable. My cousin misses his dad so much, and he's angry that his mom married again so quickly. He was mad that James's daughter was calling his mom by the name mom, and other times just telling her that she's not her mom and to please go away. And he was also angry that James was trying to do stuff for him that his dad used to do. And I'm talking stuff like going hiking or having like Father's Day events and stuff like that. It was such a mess that I was miserable being there in the middle of all of that. They were in therapy and everybody came back from that so unhappy. So in the end, I was talking to my social worker and I asked if I could please live with my grandma instead. Now, my grandma said yes, and she was so happy. So I moved in with her last week. But my aunt was so hurt that I did that, and my cousin really really misses me, and he asked if he could live with me and Grandma too. He told Grandma that he doesn't want to live with James or his daughter anymore, and that he would be way happier with her and me. And when my aunt heard about this, she was even more devastated. She told my cousin that he still had her, and he told her that he didn't want James or his daughter, and that he simply couldn't have her without them. They ended up talking, and he told her that he wished James and his daughter would go away forever and just never come back. And I think that some of my aunt's anger came from that and was directed at me over my cousin. But it made her get super angry that I asked to leave. She said that she was always there for me and would ask why I did want so badly to leave and all this other stuff. So seriously, am I the jerk in this scenario? What should I do? Okay, for starters, I don't think you're the jerk at all for wanting to live with your grandma. It sounds like your aunt has a lot going on and the timing is just really bad because you're now stuck in the middle of a really blended family that clearly has a lot of tension. And if I was going through what you were going through, where you had a mom who literally lost custody of you and is in jail, then I would want a stable home as well. It's really not fair for you at all to sit there and deal with this, especially when you have your own troubles in front of you. And from the sounds of it, it seems like your grandma would be a better suit for you overall. And it's not like you don't love your aunt. I'm sure you love your aunt and all of your family and you're grateful that they took you in. But the circumstances just seem really tricky. And it is unfortunately going to be only at your expense if you do stay there. And I think your aunt is just taking it the wrong way because she's in the middle of this, so she doesn't have the perspective that you do. She doesn't see that this is a tumultuous time for you just as much as it is for her. So no, you're definitely not the jerk for going to your grandma's house instead of staying with your aunt. Because in my opinion, based on what you've described, I think that this would really be the best fit for you and everybody involved. My sister and her family visit my house regularly, but they treat my home like a hotel. And at this point, I'm so frustrated that I now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for starters, I live in a fantastic location. It's near the beach and a short drive from hinterland. I have kids ages 8 and under, and I have a full-time job. My husband also works 13 to 14 hours a day. So as you can imagine, our hands are full. When my sister comes, I move one of my kids so that her and her family have a room big enough that they can use. But they leave wet towels on her bed, and I have addressed this with my sister before. However, she and her husband reacted quite immaturely to this, and were blaming one another instead of just taking responsibility and not doing it again. And even now, they still do this. They both shower twice a day, which is fine. It's not great, but what is frustrating is one of them has a 45-minute shower each time. They let food overflow on my stove, and they try and clean it up, and they just leave it stained. This weekend, I was left to do laundry, cook breakfast for them, breakfast for my kids, and at one point, also asked to hold their one child whilst I was doing all of that. They're also always late for events. I usually have to give them an earlier time to try and get them to places on time, and even then, they can be quite late. They sleep in, lounge around, and then go out all day, coming home after the kids have gone to bed. My kids absolutely love and adore them, and are always disappointed that they aren't spending much time together. My sister and brother-in-law also have a tendency of telling the kids that they will come to their sports events and then not showing up. My brother-in-law also likes to play pranks. He called me at work when I first started and actually pretended that there was a house fire at my home. I was stressed, and when I tried to address it, I got blamed for making it awkward. I've asked him not to prank me, but he just says he only does it to those that he loves. And I was like, please, I don't appreciate it, with him eventually stopping for a while. My youngest is also behaviorally challenged, which is exacerbated dramatically when they are here. So would I be the jerk if I set ground rules to their visits? Namely that towels stay in the bathroom, their showers can only be 10 minutes max, and they can't stay more than 2 days? What would be a tactful way of laying these ground rules out? What should I do? Okay, for starters, in my opinion, I don't think you would be the jerk at all for setting ground rules in your home. This is your place after all, and you want it to be respected and used properly. But on that note, there's also nothing wrong with telling them, hey, we don't have room for you and you need to get a hotel. They really sound like they're overstaying their welcome, and that is not fair for you or your family at all. You're trying to live a normal life, and yes, you live in a fantastic location, and you're right by the beach, and you have all these cool things at your fingertips, but that doesn't mean that they should just go around and do whatever they want. There has to be some kind of ground rules if they're gonna be there. And hopefully, if you decide to set up these ground rules, they're able to see where you're coming from. Because what you just described honestly sounds pretty miserable. Am I overreacting for getting upset about the things my dad says about my mom? Because it's all been really bothering me, despite the fact that he says that I'm overreacting. So right now, I'm so frustrated and I just don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So for starters, I decided to stay with my dad in Arkansas for a while because he recently got a knee surgery and he is having a hard time getting around. My dad and his girlfriend decided to come to church with me today, and I come to find out that it was the same church that him and my mom got married at. Anyways, the pastor was asking how long I was going to be in Arkansas for, and I said I didn't have an estimated time for now, but that I will be going to Florida with my mom when the time comes. So my dad was like, yeah, she grew up here, so her mom is really familiar with the area. So the pastor was like, oh, okay, I might know your mom. What's her name? And my dad cut me off and literally threw my mom under the bus. He was like, yeah, well, her mom and I have been married 3 times now. She was married to guy number 1 and then married to me and then took my daughter 1,000 miles away from me and took her to Florida when she was 11. So now she's married to a new guy. And for the sake of the story, we'll call this new guy, as my dad put it, by the name of Jay, and we'll call my mom Valerie. Valerie and Jay are not their real names. Now, here's the thing. My mom is so ashamed that she's been married 3 times now, and she does not like talking about it. And one of the ladies overheard my dad talking and rose her eyebrows in shock. She then said, wow, this woman's really been around. But here's the thing. My mom is not at all proud that she's been married that many times at all. She is so deeply ashamed of it, and I feel like it was no business of my dad's to bring that up. All he had to say was that her name is Valerie. He could have used her legit official maiden last names before any of her marriages, and the pastor would be familiar with her because a lot of her relatives live in the same area. I tried to confront him about it because I thought it was literally so rude of him to say that to try and make my mom look bad, but he does this all the time, trying to make her look like a crazy person. So I was trying to build the nerve to talk to him about it, and I said to him, why did you have to tell the pastor that mom was married 3 times? What was that all about? Do you not know how ashamed of it she is? And you really want to rat her out to some guy that you just met? You need to watch what you say. Well, the next thing you know, he was laughing so freaking hard at me and said that I have a lot to learn. He was like, it's really cute that you, a 21-year-old, is trying to give someone like me, a 71-year-old, any kind of advice. I said to him, I'm not trying to give you advice. I'm just telling you to stop telling people about mom's marriage history. That was seriously not your place. He then said to me, these church people are insane. They think everything is a sin. I mean, I don't even know how you like it there. I said to him, Dad, it's not the people in the church that think divorce is some ginormous sin. It's just stated in the Bible, and I will show it to you if you want proof. Just give me a break and stop making fun of the people of the church that I go to. I don't say anything about people at your church. Stop throwing mom under the bus because she never says anything bad about you. Now, seriously, I just need to say that I love my mom so much, and I didn't mean to, but I got really emotional and I started crying, which I absolutely hate, by the way. My dad then says, you are quite literally overdoing it, overreacting, and making this a big deal. Those people are not going to care about your mom getting remarried. Just drop it, for crying out loud, and quit your crying. Your mom is fine, so stop bringing it up. But I said to him, Dad, for the love of God, don't tell me that I'm overreacting. Don't tell me that at all, because it really makes me feel like I'm a burden and I can't talk to you. I'm not blowing it out of proportion. I'm just telling you what's on my mind, which is what you are supposed to be doing as a father. Now, I don't even know how, but he somehow changed the subject and made it all about Jay, who is my stepfather. He was like, I'm also getting tired of you talking about Jay. It's always Jay this and Jay that. It's all about Jay. I said to him, Dad, I hate to burst your bubble, but Jay is actually a huge part of my life, and you have no say-so to giving an opinion about him. He then proceeded to say that his girlfriend is saying that she thinks it's weird that I talk about Jay all the time, much more than I ever talk about my dad. And in response to that, I said, Dad, no offense, but she needs to keep her mouth shut. She doesn't even know me or Jay in the slightest. Besides, the same way I talk about Jay to you over here is the same way I talk about you over in Florida to Mom and Jay. So get that out of your head. That's just ridiculous. Just say you're jealous and please just drop it. So in conclusion, he made my mom look bad today by talking about her behind her back. And he may not say it, but I can tell he's jealous of Jay by all means. I could have easily said to my dad that the reason why he is married 3 times is because he cheated on his first wife and my mom, and everybody knows it, but he doesn't know that I know that information. And I actually will be surprised if he keeps this thing with his girlfriend going. So seriously, am I overreacting in this situation? Am I the one that's taking this out of line? My dad always makes me feel like I'm some sort of kid and just diminishes my feelings. And I really hate to say it, but I feel like coming to Arkansas may have been a huge mistake. All of our conversations end this way, and I feel like I'm about to hit my breaking point because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, for starters, you're definitely not overreacting. Like the things your dad said about your mom is completely inappropriate. There's no rational reason for your dad to be bringing up those marriages besides
besides the fact that he's just salty that she's married to somebody else. Like, it really seems like this is what's actually going on, and in my opinion, that is not fair in the slightest. So if anything, and I think this might be the only silver lining, I think it's really good that you stood up for your mom, especially when your dad was trashing her like that, because all that information was not needed. And you said it best in my opinion. You don't bring up the fact that he's been married 3 times, so for him to be like, oh yeah, she was married 3 times, is like really insane to me and so hypocritical, because that easily could be spun against him at the drop of a hat. So no, you're definitely not overreacting, because from the sounds of it, those things definitely needed to be said. My husband's brother and his wife actually told me at my house that my husband is secretly gay, and that my marriage is a front for his secret activities with his best friend. And now my husband and I are furious with them, demanding some kind of answer for this obvious lie that they tried to tell me. Here's what happened. So about a month ago, my sister-in-law came to my house with her daughter, and for reference, I also have a 6-month-old baby. Anyways, everything was going pretty normal. We talked, we made dinner, and vented to each other about normal marriage and life stuff that's going on in our lives. But then things definitely took a turn. My husband and I moved into our house 6 months prior to this visit with my sister-in-law. So literally 1 week after I gave birth, we moved into this house. My husband works a lot, so the majority of caring for our baby is on me, and that is okay, but for the first 3 or 4 months, I was really in the trenches. So anyway, she starts to tell me that her and her husband's brother are very upset with us because we haven't invited them over for dinner yet, which is really kind of a weird thing to say. So at this point, I'm just letting her vent on why she's upset with us, even though they live like, what, 20 minutes away, and they've never asked to come see their new nephew or just don't want to talk at all. And also, by the way, this visit was very rare and it really was out of the blue. Anyways, she's going on that she's upset because I haven't cooked dinner for her family yet. And I'm just thinking, okay, I'm sorry. I've been extremely overwhelmed as a first-time mom with my baby and his medical issues and his bills, and I'm just dealing with day-to-day life. I honestly haven't even thought about it. I also struggle with postpartum depression pretty badly, and I was on medication for it. It was literally the last thing on my mind, so I went ahead and I apologized. Then she tells me that a week prior to her barbecue that my husband and I were at, she and her husband thought that my husband looked depressed. I was honestly confused because I've never noticed that, and my husband and I talk, like really talk about everything, and I was just surprised that she said that. I asked her, well, why do you think he seems depressed? And she says to me, before I tell you, you have to promise that you won't tell your husband. So now I am terrified, anxious, and curious, pretty much all the above. So I told her I promised I wouldn't say anything. Then in front of her daughter, who is almost 10 years old, she starts telling me that she and my brother-in-law think that my husband is depressed because he is actually gay and he just can't live with his truth. Then word for word, she told me, we honestly think he married you and had a baby with you as a front. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking about? So now I'm actually feeling weird. She went into detail that she thinks my husband and his best friend for over 10 years, who is married with children by the way, are having or were at least having a secret relationship. And I'm just thinking, what? My sister-in-law has known my husband for over 15 years. How could she say this to me after everything I've been through? Even if it was true, why? So she left my house and I honestly was thinking it over for days before I finally just told my husband, and he was extremely upset. My brother-in-law is the type of man that if I would have said that to his wife about him, he would have come for my throat. My husband and I decided not to say anything yet, but it's getting hard, and it has been about a month. After she left my house that night, she has not said a word to me since. Like, how do you lay that on someone and just go mute? We are family, right? I've been married to my husband almost 3 years now, and I absolutely believe him, but that's besides the point. I need to know what is the correct way to confront them, because I'm sorry, but you cannot come into my house and tell me my entire life is fake. I also want to add that about a week ago, it was their other child's birthday. The party was outside and 94 degrees out, and I didn't feel comfortable having my baby outside in that heat. So when we told them that, and that we weren't coming to the party because of that, they told us that they didn't care if we came, and then they hung up the phone and haven't said a word since. My husband is pissed and hurt, and so am I, and I'm so tired of letting things slide with his family. How do my husband and I navigate this issue? What should I do? Okay, your sister-in-law absolutely sucks. She literally came to you and said, oh yeah, your husband's secretly gay, he doesn't love you, gotta go, bye. Like, the only reason I can think that she would even begin to say that is because she's literally just trying to start drama. She's trying to make some kind of divide between you and your husband and stir up some stupid crap between all of you for like no reason. Like, why else would she make up this narrative without any kind of evidence? If your husband really was like hooking up with his best
friend of 10 years, wouldn't you think she would try to have some kind of evidence to back up that claim? For her to say that and then leave and then ghost you, in my opinion, not only shows that she's full of crap, but also extremely guilty of trying to divide your family. And in my opinion, I would not take that for a second. So either you or your husband definitely needs to have some kind of conversation, because what she said is absolutely unacceptable. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my dad that he's not allowed to give his speech at my wedding that he basically said he was going to give without my permission? Because right now he is saying that I'm acting immature and that he has every right to do this regardless of what I say. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my fiance and I are both in our 20s and we're getting married in a month. And there is a dispute with my dad now, and he claims I'm being unfair. But I wanted to get some thoughts on it just so I can try and see what I should do. So dad decided he was going to give a speech at the wedding without saying anything to me first. He had shared the contents of said speech with his sister, who's my aunt, and she knew the speech would not sit well with me and mentioned his plan to me. So in this speech that he already wrote, he talks a lot about how his wife is the love of his life and how amazing she is and all this other stuff. And it's very similar to the speech he gave at their vow renewal 10 years ago. He hasn't shied away from expressing in front of me and to me that he never loved anyone like he loved his wife, how all his past relationships pale in comparison, and that includes my mom, who was his first wife, who left him widowed with an 8-year-old son at the time. To make this even more difficult to hear, the vow renewal was held on my 18th birthday, and I got to celebrate my birthday by hearing dad talk about how mom meant nothing because his second wife was so much better. They were married 8 years at the time, but a lot of family and friends didn't attend their actual wedding, and they decided they'd basically have a second one to celebrate, and they decided that my birthday was the perfect time to do this. So anyways, the speech he wrote for my wedding had a lot of this content from what my aunt heard from my dad and read for herself. She knew on my wedding day the last thing I needed to hear was how much he adores his wife when he does so in a way that basically said my mom meant nothing to him. So I approached him and I told him I knew about the speech and that he did not have my permission to give the speech at my wedding. My dad asked me why not, and I told him that I didn't want him to use my wedding to praise his wife. He said, well, she means the world to us, so why would I say that? But I told him that sure, she means the world to him, but she pales in comparison to my mom, who meant the world to me and still does. I told him he might have decided mom meant nothing, but that didn't mean I shared his feelings. He then accused me of being sensitive, and then said that it seemed like I didn't care about his wife at all. And then he said that she was a good mom to me for the 8 years that she raised me. But I told him that she was never anything more than his wife. My mom passed away when I was 8 and I didn't get a new one. And the last thing I need to hear is how little she meant on my wedding day. My dad told me to be reasonable and that the parents of the bride and groom typically say something. But I said that nothing he had to say had a place at my wedding, that it's mine and my fiance's wedding and it is not his. I told him to get married again if all he wants to do is praise his wife, but that is not happening at mine. He told me to stop acting like a little boy and that I need to grow up. And after he said that, I just left. Then his wife called crying about the fight that dad and I had, which led to dad calling me again and telling me to grow up again. So am I the jerk here? What should I do? You're not the jerk because your dad is so obnoxious. Seriously, it sounds like he wants to hijack your wedding and basically make this grand speech about your mom when it's like, what in the world does your mom have to do with any of this? And this is clearly just your dad trying to pull attention away from your big day. He's trying to make this all about him and his relationship with his wife by basically stomping on the grave of your mother and ruining the best day of your life. And that is so unfair, it's not even funny. So no, you are definitely not the jerk because what your dad is trying to do is so intrusive it's not even funny. And if I was in your shoes, I would have shut that down as well. My family literally won't allow me to share any good news, all because of my sister's recent disability. And now I'm wondering if I'm the jerk in this situation because right now I'm kind of at a loss and I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I have an older sister who had a tragic accident 3 years ago that left her paralyzed from the waist down. It's been rough for everyone, but especially for her. Our family rallied around her, helping out as much as we can, and I've been there every step of the way because I love her so much. But since the accident, it feels like I don't deserve to have any good things happen to me, or at least I'm not allowed to talk about them. Every time something positive happens in my life, I get shut down by my family. When I got a promotion at work last year, I was so happy and excited to tell them. I thought my family would be happy for me, but when I tried to share the news, my mom pulled me aside and told me not to do it now because my sister had a tough day. So I ended up just keeping it to myself. Well, 8 months ago, my boyfriend proposed. And when I told them, my mom immediately changed the subject, later telling me that my sister was feeling down about her own marriage struggles. It's like anything good in my life is an offense to my sister's situation. Fast forward, and the most recent incident happened a few days ago. I've been saving up for years to buy my first new car. I finally managed to do it, and I was so excited. I thought my family would be happy for me, so I decided to tell them. As soon as the words were out of my mouth, the room went completely silent. My mom then whispered to me, "This isn't the time. Think about your sister." And when I looked over, my sister looked so sad, and I instantly felt like the worst person in the world. And at that point, I simply couldn't handle it anymore. I said to them, "Can't I share anything good in my life? I thought you'd all be happy for me." Well, when I said that, no one knew what to say, so I just left the house. I've never done that before, but now I'm filled with regret and confusion. I love my sister and I never want to hurt her, but it feels like I'm not allowed to have anything good happen to me. It's getting to the point where I feel like I'm walking on eggshells all the time. I understand my sister's life has changed drastically, and I'm genuinely supportive and have always been there for her. But sometimes I just want to be able to share my own life too. I feel so guilty for even feeling this way, like I'm being selfish or inconsiderate. Her husband and even my parents share things about their lives freely, and no one ever seems to mind. But as the younger sister, I'm not allowed to share anything good in front of her so I don't hurt her feelings. And I get it, I really do. I understand she's going through a lot, and I don't want to add to her pain, but it feels like I'm not allowed to have any joy in my life around my family. Now, I know that I owe my sister an apology for how I reacted, and I never want to make her feel sad, but I'm struggling with how to approach my family. I don't feel like I should apologize to them, and honestly, I don't think I'll be sharing anything with them in the future, because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. So I don't think you're the jerk at all, but also, I think it probably would be a good idea to talk to your sister and be like, "Hey, I'm sorry for the way I reacted," because I'm sure if you have some kind of discussion, she will definitely see where you're coming from and understand your concerns. And I'm willing to bet, just from the sounds of it, that she probably has noticed the way they react anytime you try to share anything good. Like your mom shuts you down to the drop of a hat because she thinks that you're gonna somehow offend your sister. But maybe talking to her directly and being like, "Hey, are you offended when I share good news in my life?" Or having like some kind of conversation might cut down on your mom being the middleman in this situation. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, and you have every right to share your good news going on in your life. My parents congratulated me for graduating from college, but I later found out that they were actually criticizing me behind my back, all because I graduated when I was 28 years old. And I'm now feeling very depressed and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm 28 years old and I graduated from college yesterday, and I was very happy. I graduated so late because I had started to study medicine when I was 18 years old with a very high grade point average in high school, but I started to suffer from very strong anxiety problems and I had to drop out, which also led to depression. Finally, after going through a midlife crisis and just not knowing what to do, I did 2 years of professional training and then started nursing school, but in the middle I got depressed again and it took me another year to graduate. My parents apparently celebrated my graduation with me, but then I heard them secretly criticizing me, saying that it took me 10 years to graduate, that it was a lot of years and that I lost 3 years in medicine, and that then I did vocational training and now it took me many years in nursing, and how I almost didn't graduate. They also said that before I had nothing, but now at least I have something. And they spoke about me in such a derogatory tone, as if I'm some kind of failure. At this point, I burst into tears, and it really hurt me deeply, especially because my mother went so far as to call me a failure when I left medicine, and they only cared about my academic achievements and never even acknowledged that I had depression or even asked me how I was doing. I don't know if I'm overreacting, but it's not the first time they've had this attitude. On top of that, when I confronted them, they denied everything and changed their story, saying that they had done nothing wrong and that they were glad that it was over, which made me doubt my own perception. So I'm honestly so upset and I now just don't know what to do. Wow, your parents suck. I'm just gonna say that first and foremost. Who in their right mind would be like, "Yeah, congratulations for graduating, but also it's kind of your own fault for not doing it sooner"? Do they not realize that you went through a mental health crisis? Like seriously, these people are so inconsiderate. Like yeah, in their minds you graduated, but there's obviously an asterisk next to it because they're not completely proud of you. And that is not fair for you. So if I was in your shoes, I would not allow that to bother me in the slightest. These people suck and you now see them for exactly how they really are. An entitled jerk of a customer tries to run rush me into opening our store sooner than we were ready. And after hearing his sarcastic comments, I decided to fight back in a way that I've always wanted to do. And I've honestly never felt better about putting somebody in their place in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so working at a bottle shop, we are usually solo with the occasional overlapping where there are two of us in the shop at a given time. But on this particular day, I was by myself. I had to close the store to take rubbish out, take the pallets out, take my 15-minute break, and get change for big notes to small notes from a machine. So I shut the store, and I had a cardboard clock hanging on the window, which basically said that we would be back at 7 o'clock p.m. So I'm already trying to rush my break, and I don't really mind that because usually the last hour is so quiet that it's technically a break for the whole hour because I'm making sure that everything's done before we close. Anyways, as I was getting change, I overheard another employee saying, "Oh, he won't be too long. They are usually working by themselves, so they have to shut the store." And I knew she was talking about me and trying to defend me. So I look at the person that was spoken to, and he said to her, "It doesn't matter. How do I know how long he will be?" Then I told him that there's a clock on the door and to please take a look. He then looked up, and it was just under the time the cardboard clock showed. He then looks at the clock and looks at his wristwatch. He then realizes that not only was there a sign showing when the shop would reopen, but also that there were still a couple of minutes left. As I was inserting the big notes into the machine, he came over and said to me, "Take your time, mate. I've got all day." And I asked him if he was being sarcastic or if he was being serious. And again, he said the same thing. "Oh, just take your time, mate." I just replied by saying, "Mate, I'm going to open the store in a few minutes, and if you come in, I am not serving you. So you might as well get lost and go somewhere else." He then proceeded to walk away, and it was such a great feeling. And I just really wish that this other guy who has not returned for a while comes back in so I can give it right back at him as well. This guy was always a rude person. In fact, one time we ran out of bags, so he asked me for a bag and I said, "Sorry, we ran out." To which he says, "Well, go get some. How hard can it be?" But either way, I'm glad about how I handled this because I finally shut someone down who absolutely deserved it. Yeah, customers can be massive jerks sometimes. They come at you and make all these wild, weird assumptions about what you're doing and try to act like their time is super valuable. And it's like, dude, you're not some important person. You're just some ordinary idiot just like the rest of us. So that means you're not going to get preferential treatment. So I'm right there with the original poster. I can't stand people who act this way because chances are they will never be happy with anything you give them. They will always be the first person to complain about customer service when in reality they're probably the worst customer to deal with on a daily basis. So overall, good for you for standing up to these people because that guy was clearly being a massive jerk and you did not deserve to be treated like that in the slightest. An entitled impatient jerk swears at me as I'm crossing the street to get on the other side of it simply because he was too impatient to wait his turn. But as a result, this guy decided to drive down the wrong side of the street, screaming and swearing at me in the process, but also crashing his car into a ditch. And I've honestly never felt better about watching karma work her magic in my life. Here's what happened. So yesterday, I decided to take a walk to the shops. And I love to walk even though it's only about 10 minutes away. On my way there, I noticed that a giant part of the road had been dug up. The asphalt chunks were on the walkway, clearly visible to anyone, and the workers had placed a caution marker in the middle of the road. My guess is that they had placed some pipes under the road, given that it was about 2 meters wide and spanned the entire 2-lane road. It was a pretty deep hole though, but not deep enough to harm a car if they slowly drove through it. This is in the suburbs, so there were only a few cars that were taking their time to get over the ditch. Now, I didn't pay it any mind, and I continued to do my walk to the store. On my way back, I had noticed there were a few more cars backed up behind the ditch, and they were all moving super slowly. There was one guy that was leaning on his horn, waving his arms sporadically, and he was clearly very upset. This guy was also in one of those super low to the ground cars, and to give you a visual of this, think of a rich person in the middle of a midlife crisis, and then you can imagine the kind of car he's probably driving. I had to get to the other side of the road though, and I waited until the line had come to a brief full stop. I did a quick check to see if there were any oncoming cars, and then I ran to the other side of the street. Remember, this is the suburbs, so there is no crossing, and it is completely legal in my area to just cross the street. But I, of course, made the mistake of doing this right in front of Mr. Impatient. He then honked his horn even more and yelled something out of his window, but I just ignored him and I kept on walking. A few seconds later, right by the ditch, Mr. Impatient comes flying past me on the wrong side of the street. He then yells at me, "And F you too." And he screamed this while hanging out of his window. And he had not even finished his yell when he drove smack into that ditch. It was a super loud bang and he was skidding to a halt. His entire front bumper bumper was completely destroyed, and who knows what other unseen damage there was. I just raised an eyebrow and I noticed a lady in an SUV laughing hysterically. I kept my cool and I just continued walking. But once I was around the block, I had to sit down and just laugh. So the moral of the story is that karma is a cruel mistress, and she is not someone that you ever want to mess with. Wow, this guy's an idiot. Instead of just waiting in line like everybody else, this guy actually rode down the wrong side of the street and probably caused the most avoidable accident known to man. Like, he literally just had to stay in his lane and wait his turn. Like, seriously, I'm sure it wasn't taking that long to get down the street. Like, I cannot stand people who act this way. They pretend like they're the most important person in the room, or they have like this really important schedule that everyone has to adhere to, as if they have some kind of special calling in life, when chances are this guy works a 9 to 5 just like the rest of us, and yet here he is driving down the wrong side of the street, honking his horn and swearing at people. That's just insane behavior, and it really does not solve anything. It doesn't make the line go faster, and no one's gonna get out of your way just because you're freaking out. But I've gotta be honest, it probably was so glorious watching his car go into that ditch, because this literally is karma working its magic. And when he messed around, he definitely found out, and he has nobody to blame except for himself. And I'm kinda jealous that you got to see that, because that had to have been absolutely hilarious to witness. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.